Chapter 2498, Who Said We Were Poisoned? 3. A moment later, Leng Ruoxue walked out from behind with a refreshed expression. The few city lords quickly looked up and sized her up. From her appearance, she did not look like someone who had been tortured. However, the few of them were smart enough not to say their guesses. At this moment, the city lord's wife also looked at Leng Ruoxue and said with an ambiguous expression, "What do you think? My son is not bad, right?" When Leng Ruoxue heard this, she couldn't help but frown. These words really didn't sound like something a mother should say. It's just barely satisfactory. She still gave him face. "What did you just say? My son has been tormented for so long, and you're still not satisfied?" He still dared to say that he was barely satisfactory. "It looks like you really are a cheap person," the city lord's wife said angrily. City lord's wife, whether I'm a cheap person or not, what does it have to do with how long your son has been tormented? However, since you've said so, I'll have a good talk with you. Your son is really not good enough. I haven't even made a move yet. He was already lying on the ground, sigh. I guess you can't understand the disappointment in my heart. Leng Ruoxue complained with a sorrowful expression. However, the mayor's wife clearly didn't believe her and retorted loudly, "My son can't be that useless. You must be lying to me. Since you don't believe me, I'll have to show you the evidence so that you won't accuse me," Leng Ruoxue said with a helpless expression. As soon as she finished speaking, everyone saw a few cute little beasts walking out from the back of the hall in elegant small steps. Those little beasts were dragging a rope in their claws, and the other end of the rope was tied to a bloody mess, obviously in a deep coma. If it could be considered a person. Oh my God! Who was this guy? Looking at the bloody piece of meat, the city lords were all frightened and felt a chill down their backs. This kind of fear that made them break out in cold sweat from the bottom of their feet had never appeared when they knew that they were poisoned, but now, they had it. The city lord's wife naturally saw the piece of flesh as well. Following that, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. Her hand trembled as she pointed at the bloody piece of flesh and said, Who is he? Young Master Cheng, your son. Leng Ruoxue sneered. Hearing Leng Ruoxue's answer, the few city lords could not help but shiver. They all recalled how they had flirted with Leng Ruoxue previously. Although they had not gone too far, if she were to come after them for revenge, they would not be able to escape from their current situation. Thinking of this, the city lords wished they could pretend to be invisible, not daring to say a word. Otherwise, if the other party treated them the same way he treated young Master Cheng, they would definitely not be able to escape death. Sob. It's too scary, isn't it? At this moment, the clear claw marks on young Master Cheng's body were so deep that his bones could be seen. It was a reminder to them just how ruthless the other party's claws were. This is impossible. The city lords believed Leng Ruoxue's words, but a certain madam didn't. She couldn't convince herself that the bloodied fellow in front of her was her son. Her son wouldn't be so useless. Since madam doesn't believe me, I can only prove it to you. Leng Ruoxue's smile was rather evil. She gave her precious a look, and her precious understood and immediately threw a pill into young Master Cheng's half-open mouth. Not long after, young Master Cheng woke up, and the injuries on his body had completely healed. The city lords were once again stunned by this scene. Wasn't the effect of this pill a little too good? However, before they could think further, they were disturbed by young Master Cheng's pig-like howl. Mother! Save me! Save me! These guys aren't human. Woo-woo, they're bullying me. The moment young Master Cheng saw his mother, he immediately called for help. When the city lord's wife saw that the blood clot was really her son, she became anxious. She glared at Leng Ruoxue and shouted, "Damn little bitch, quickly order these little bastards to let go of my son." You bastard! You're the little bastard, your entire family are little bastards. Hearing them being called little bastards, Baby was unhappy. After giving his friends another look, baby, and the other beastie reenacted the scene in the small room in front of everyone who was still clear about the situation. A cold glint flashed in front of their eyes, and pieces of flesh flew in all directions. The terrifying and bloodthirsty scene petrified the few city lords present once again. Their bodies also trembled involuntarily. It was too terrifying. Even though they had lived in the Nine Nether prison for so long, they had never seen such a torturous scene. Compared to these fierce little beasts, the city masters felt that they were as kind as a piece of white paper. These small beasts were most likely the natives of the Nine Nether prison. Boo-hoo. Even though they were poisoned, they didn't have the time to think about how long they could live. At this moment, their hearts and minds were moved by those fierce and bloodthirsty little beasts. They were afraid that they would be the next ones to attack. With this thought in mind, the city lords fearfully found their own corners and tried to lower their presence. When the city lord's wife first saw this bloodthirsty scene, she was also instantly scared silly. When she finally came back to her senses, her son had once again become a bloody piece of meat, and this time, she didn't even hear her son's cry of pain. The city lord's wife's anger surged when she saw her son's mouth being gagged by a piece of blood-stained cloth. Then, her face contorted as she glared at Len Ruoxue and roared, "Damn bitch, I won't let you off." "Thanks, oh, really? I'll be waiting. However, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to do so." With that, Len Ruoxue walked towards the city lord's wife, causing her to retreat in fear. What are you doing?" the city lord's wife said with a trembling voice. She couldn't deny that she was a little scared, especially when she saw that the little beasts had actually abandoned her unconscious son and were walking towards her. She immediately thought of the violent actions of these little beasts and her heart was instantly filled with fear. The city lord's wife retreated step by step under the pressure of Len Ruoxue, her baby, and the other little beasts. She kept shouting, "Men! Men! Someone come and protect me." However, at this moment, many of the guards who had just witnessed the terrifying sight of the little beasts were so afraid that they did not dare to stand out. "Stop screaming. No one will come to save you at this time." Len Ruoxue smiled faintly and said. "Impossible. I'm the city lord's wife." The city lord's husband shouted in a self-deceiving manner. "Oh, really? If any of you want to save her, feel free to do so." When Len Ruoxue heard this, she immediately turned towards the guard who had unknowingly retreated into a corner. The moment she asked, the guard simply turned around and ran. When the city lord's wife saw this scene, she was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Fuck. I knew these people can't be counted on. Suddenly, the city lord's wife caught a glimpse of the evildoer and the others from the corner of her eye. She quickly pointed at them and said, "Bitch, if you dare to touch a single hair on my head, I'll make them die with me." "Oh, really? I think you can try," Len Ruoxue said nonchalantly, her face full of disapproval. You're really not afraid? Can you just watch them die?" The city lord's wife couldn't help but ask when she saw that she couldn't threaten the other party. "I feel that even if all of your family members are dead, they won't lose a single hair." Len Ruoxue smiled. "This is impossible. They were also poisoned. I'm the only one who has the antidote for that poison." The city lord's wife did not believe Len Ruoxue's words and reminded her once again. "So what if you have the antidote? I'm an alchemist, would it be difficult for me to concoct an antidote pill?" Len Ruoxue said with a calm expression. At this time, the demon's voice also sounded, who said we were poisoned. After saying that, evildoer and the others who were unconscious sat up one by one. The mayor's wife widened her eyes in disbelief. Even Roji, who had been paying attention to the development of the situation, couldn't help but be surprised. "This is impossible. You guys were clearly poisoned." After a long while, the shocked city lord's wife finally managed to say a complete sentence. "I'm so sorry. Madam, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we weren't poisoned. We were just too tired and took a nap." Uncle Long replied with a smile. This answer made the city lord's wife so angry that she almost vomited blood. Even Ruji, who had been watching the show after realizing that they weren't poisoned, couldn't help but be speechless. Ruji now felt that she had never truly understood the background of these deities. But now, could she be considered to have seen their true faces? It seemed that his decision was correct. Unfortunately, there was an accident, and he didn't know how long he could live. Uncle Long, let's capture this woman. At this moment, Len Ruoshua saw that the time was right, so she spoke to Uncle Long and the others. All right, he said. Yes, sir. Uncle Long replied and led his men to surround the city lord's wife. This action also caused the city lord's wife, who had been somewhat dazed from the blow, to quickly come back to her senses. The city lord's wife held her head high and puffed out her chest, as if she was a fox exploiting a tiger's might, and loudly said, "How dare you?" The wife of the 9 capital city lord. However, before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by the 9 capital city lord, who had a rather ugly expression on his face. You're no longer the wife of the 9 capital city lord. You, the city lord's wife heard this and glared at the 9 capital city lord. Then, she turned around and shouted at Len Ruoshua and the rest, the Johua city lord's younger sister. Try and touch me. My brother won't let you off. Oh, really? Don't worry, I'll order the Johua city lord to come and pick you up. I won't kill you before I see him. The demon said coldly. The city lord's wife saw that the other party wasn't threatened by her, and immediately didn't know what to do. How did this happen? She didn't expect that the mayor of Johua City wouldn't be scared even after she mentioned him. What should she do now? Chapter 2499, Doing a Good Deed Every Day. 1. The city lord's wife panicked. Just as the city lord's wife was racking her brain to continue threatening them, Uncle Long looked at the city lord's wife, who was still in a daze, with a little sympathy. Then, he took out a rope and tied the city lord's wife, who didn't have time to struggle, like a dumpling. He was afraid that she would cry out, so he cut a piece of cloth from her body and stuffed it into her mouth. After he had completed the task smoothly, Uncle Long glanced at the 9 capital city lord and the rest in disdain before he turned to Len Ruoshua and the rest and said, Shuar, you can wrap up now. All right. Let's go. Len Ruoshua nodded. With that, she led the evildoer and the others out of the city lord's mansion. Before she left, the evildoer even glanced at the 9 capital city lord meaningfully, which immediately scared the 9 capital city lord's little heart. It was too terrifying, wasn't it? Although the man only glanced at him, he could feel the coldness in the man's eyes. The coldness made him shiver. He had lived for a long time, but he had never felt like he had half a foot in death. Who was that person? Wu. Why did she give him such a terrifying feeling? Even the powerful lord of Johua City didn't make him feel like he was facing the god of death. The 9 capital city lord was filled with fear. After Len Ruoshua and the others had left, he helped Ruji up from the ground. At this moment, his clothes were already half soaked with cold sweat. What should we do? The 9 capital city lord looked at his beloved woman affectionately, and asked helplessly. City lord, Madam and young Master Cheng are both in the hands of young Lady Leng and the others. What are your plans? Ji didn't answer, but asked tentatively. When Len Ruoshua and the others left, they also took the 2 fellows away. This was to her liking. However, she still had to confirm the city lord's intentions. Otherwise, it would be hard for her to make arrangements for her subordinates. Unexpectedly, when the 9 capital city lord heard Ruji's question, he immediately roared in anger, What other plans can I have? Those 2 fellows are courting death. Don't expect me to save them. In fact, he could not save her. Regarding this, the 9 capital city lord was still very aware of his own limitations. This feeling became even more intense after he received a glance from the terrifying man before he left. Now, he finally believed in Ruji's words. Ruji had the foresight. Those people really couldn't be provoked. Thinking of this, the 9 capital city lord looked at Ruji with tender eyes. However, Ruji, who had always been generous, blushed under his red and hot eyes. The 9 capital city lord also rarely saw Ruji blushing, so he became even more affectionate. Unfortunately, their affectionate gaze was interrupted by a few people who spoiled the mood. 9 mountain city lords said with a speechless expression, "I say, you two, now is not the time for you to be lovey-dovey. Why don't you think about what to do about the poison in our bodies?" "Arg. I'm finished. Ruji, we're going to die." After hearing 9 mountain city lords' words, the 9 capital city lord finally remembered that he was still poisoned. When he thought about how he was about to die with the beautiful and lovely Ruji, his heart felt bitter. Thanks Ruji, who originally wanted to treat the 9 capital city lord gently, immediately rolled her eyes when she heard his words. She said in an unpleasant tone, "Is this the time to think about being poisoned? Let's think about how we're going to explain this to the Castellan of Jiuhua City. Why do we need to explain to the Jiuhua City Lord that we were poisoned?" The 9 mountain city lord could not help but ask in a daze. "Don't you know that the Castellan's wife is the younger sister of the Castellan?" Ruji asked as if she was looking at an idiot. "I know. Even if the mayor's wife is the sister of the mayor of Jiuhua City, we shouldn't be the ones to answer to her for poisoning us. Instead, he should be the one to answer to us, right?" Another city lord couldn't help but ask. "To think that you're a city lord, yet you're so simple-minded. Let me ask you, if someone in your family did something like the mayor's wife did and fell into someone else's hands, would you treat it as if nothing happened, or would you save the person?" Ruji asked helplessly. "That depends on the situation," the 9 mountain city lord said honestly. If the other party's strength was inferior to his, then he would definitely have to save him. After all, he was a member of his own clan, and it was up to his own clan to decide how to deal with him. However, if the other party was too strong and he could not gnaw at him, then not only would he have to treat it as if nothing had happened, but he would also have to be careful to prevent the other party from venting his anger on his own clan. In short, such things had to be done randomly and could not be treated the same way. As far as I know, the Jiuhua City Lord is always protective of his sister. Although he doesn't care about his sister, he'll definitely come for us if he knows something happened to her. By then, we won't be able to escape. Ruji saw that 9 mountain city lord wasn't so stupid that he couldn't be saved, so she reminded him. After Ruji finished her words, the city lords all fell silent. Although 9 Nether prison had an unwritten rule that if a family member caused trouble, the family would not get involved, most of the families who did so were small families who wanted to protect themselves. For example, the families of the city lords of the top 10 main cities did not care how big the trouble caused by their family members was. For the honor of their families, they would not stand by and watch their family members' trouble. In other words, they were going to be in trouble. At the thought of this, the city lords' faces instantly turned pale, and they all had the urge to cry. They couldn't be so unlucky as to suffer the wrath of the 9 capital city lord after being poisoned, right? Woo, the ones who injured the city lord and his wife were obviously not them. They were also victims, okay? However, after seeing Len Ruoxu's ferocious beasts, they didn't dare to betray her and the others. Those people were probably even more powerful than the lord of Jiuhua City. Thinking of this, the city lords were at a loss. After a long silence, the Castellans found that Ruji was quite calm. They couldn't help but ask curiously, "Ruji, do you have any good ideas?" "Yes, I do. I'm just afraid you won't listen," Ruji said with a faint smile. "Let's hear it first," the 9 mountain city lords said urgently. "Just go and seek protection from Len Ruoxue and the others." Ruji didn't beat around the bush and said directly. After hearing this, the city lords couldn't help but look troubled. The other party was a god. Not long ago, they had teased him and treated him as their prey. Now, they had to rely on their prey to block the anger of the lord of Jiuhua City. They couldn't accept it. Seeing through their thoughts, Ruji sneered, "I've already said my opinion. It's not up to me to decide if you'll listen." Chapter 2500 Doing a Good Deed Every Day, 2, what about us? The 9 capital city lord asked carefully. Of course, it's the same. Ruji said. Even though she sounded so certain, she wasn't sure if Leng Ruoxue and the others were willing to take them in. Perhaps. They didn't even think highly of them. They are gods. If the people in the 9 nether prison know that we have joined the gods, they will look down on us. After thinking for a while, the 9 capital city lord gathered his courage and said. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Ruji with fear and his heart started to beat wildly again. Wouldn't be angry at him, would she? The 9 capital city lord couldn't help but think. So what if you're a god? The enemy of our enemy is our friend. Now, the Castellan of Jiuhua City is our common enemy, so we should work together. Ji said matter-of-factly. In fact, it wasn't that she didn't have any selfish thoughts. She was still suspicious of the evildoer's identity, but she was very clear that unless he admitted it, she would never be able to find out the truth about his identity. After seeing the slight abilities that Leng Ruoxue and the others had displayed, she wanted to take a gamble. If she won the bet, she would be able to return to Jiuhua City openly. If she lost the bet, she wouldn't lose anything, would she? Moreover, she still remembered Leng Ruoxue saying that she was a famous alchemist. Due to their innate attributes, the people in the 9 nether prison couldn't have the profession of an alchemist. As for them, they dreamed of having the opportunity to befriend an alchemist. Now that an alchemist was in front of them, Ruji naturally didn't want to miss it. However, she would not tell these words to the other city lords. It was best if they could figure it out on their own. If they gave up such a good opportunity, she would not sympathize with them. Moreover, no matter what the 9 capital city lord thought, she had already made up her mind. After making up her mind and ordering her trusted subordinates to deal with the aftermath, Ji considerately ordered the city lords, who were still deep in thought, to be sent to their rooms. After returning to her room, Ji saw the 9 capital city lord hesitating to speak. She sighed helplessly and whispered something to him. When the 9 capital city lord heard this, his face turned even paler. He asked in shock and disbelief, really? He was a little scared by Ji's words. However, he knew Ji well. He believed that if she didn't have any clues, she wouldn't have said that. However, he was even more scared. There was an 80 to 90% chance of this happening. He was quite clear about Ruji's previous identity. Although I'm not too sure, my intuition tells me that this person is very dangerous. Ji said with a serious face. Dangerous? It was simply terrifying. It's too terrifying. As if he had found a soulmate, the 9 capital city lord immediately agreed. When he thought about the look in the man's eyes before he left, he broke out in a cold sweat again. Then what is the city lord's decision? Ruji asked. Ruji, I'll listen to you. From now on, I'll listen to you. You decide. The 9 capital city lord said with a lingering fear. Although he couldn't confirm the man's identity, he still had to thank Ruji for her foresight. Fortunately, he didn't foolishly take revenge for Bu Shao. Otherwise, wouldn't he have already offended him? Thanks, with city lord's words, I can rest assured. Castellan, send someone to deliver a letter to the Castellan of Jiuhua City and report what happened here to him. As for his decision, it's none of our business. Ji suggested. Alright. By the way, what about the 9 mountain city lord and the others? The 9 capital city lord asked. Actually, he wanted to say whether he should tell the other city lords about his guess of the man's identity, but he was afraid that Ruji would be unhappy, so he said it in a more reserved way. Why should we care about their lives? Ji roared in anger. She was a petty woman who held grudges. She had never forgotten how those people had shouted at her and teased Leng Ruoxue. She believed that Leng Ruoxue wouldn't want to see them. No matter. I don't care. I'm just asking. The 9 capital city lord said fearfully. He immediately tucked his tail between his legs and looked at Ruji with an ingratiating expression. City Lord, I'm doing this for your own good. Think about how they treated Len Ruoxue before. If that man's identity is as I've guessed, then Len Ruoxue is our 9 nether prisons, Ruji said earnestly, deliberately leaving out half of what she had said. But when the 9 capital city lord heard this, he immediately understood and nodded repeatedly, his face full of lingering fear. But then, he asked with some confusion, since Roer doesn't care about their lives, why did you suggest them to seek the protection of the gods? We are all grasshoppers on the same vine. I have done my part by reminding them. If they don't listen, they naturally can't blame us. This way, it will save us a lot of trouble. Ji revealed a cunning smile. Roer's words make sense, the 9 capital city lord flattered. His face was still filled with the disgusting expression of how smart Roer was. However, Ruji was very pleased to see this. Castellan, write a letter to the Castellan of Jiuhua City. Ruji rolled her eyes at the 9 capital city lord and urged. I'll go now. The 9 capital city lord was excited and eagerly prepared to go to the study room. However, before he left, he asked with a worried look, Roer, what about our poison? Cold. Hurry up and write the letter. Ruji was getting impatient with the 9 capital city lord's hesitation and started to roar. Yes. After the 9 capital city lord responded, he immediately ran to his study. The next day. Early in the morning, Ruji had brought the 9 capital city masters to the inn to look for Len Ruoxue and the others. The moment she saw Len Ruoxue, Ruji immediately apologized to her and said that they had already reported this to the Jiuhua city lord. She believed that the Jiuhua city lord would be here soon. At the same time, she also told Len Ruoxue about the situation with the Jiuhua city lord. Len Ruoxue listened to Ruji's endless rambling. In the end, she could only conclude a few things about the situation with the Castellan of Jiuhua City. The Jiuhua City lord was very protective. The Castellan of Jiuhua City was ruthless, and his way of dealing with his enemies was absolutely daunting. The Castellan of Jiuhua City was also a man who liked beautiful women, and the woman he liked the most was Piaoyao, the most beautiful woman in the 9 nether prison. In summary, Ruji spent half a day explaining. However, after hearing Ruji's words, Len Ruoxue became interested in the #1 beauty of the 9 nether prison. Ruji had also mentioned that the biggest dream of the floating jade beauty was to become the nether empress of the 9 nether prison. In that case, she had a potential love rival. Although Len Ruoxue didn't know if Ruji mentioned the floating beauty on purpose or not, she could see the hatred Ruji had for the floating beauty. When Ruji mentioned the floating beauty, it could be said that she was gnashing her teeth in anger. Chapter 2501, Doing a Good Deed Every Day, 3. After saying all this nonsense, Ruji looked at Len Ruoxue, who didn't seem to be impatient at all. After hesitating for a long time, she couldn't help but ask, Miss Leng, I have something to tell you. Seeing Ruji hesitating, Len Ruoxue smiled and said, You're asking me about my man's identity, right? Len Ruoxue's straightforwardness made Ruji feel embarrassed for her own thoughts. The reason why she wanted to chat with Len Ruoxue alone was because she felt that it was easier for women to get along with each other. More importantly, women were the most soft-hearted. You know him? Len Ruoxue asked with a faint smile. Not really. I've only seen my lord from afar once. Moreover, the person beside you looks slightly different from my lord. However, as your subordinate, I know my lord's aura. Ruji replied honestly. Since Len Ruoxue was willing to ask this, she knew that her guess was almost right. This fact made her feel ecstatic. You're the demon's subordinate? Ruji's identity surprised Len Ruoxue. Yes. I used to be a guard of the city lord's mansion in Jiuhua City. However, something happened, so I came to the 9 capital city. Ruji avoided the important part and said. Since you're a guard of Jiuhua City, you should know my temper. What's your purpose in deliberately getting close to Shuer? Suddenly, a devilish cold voice came from the room. Ruji's delicate body trembled when she heard it. Then, a slight ripple appeared in the air of the room, and the tall figure of the evildoer appeared. Seeing this, Roji immediately knelt down and lowered her head. She said with respect, "Greetings, my lord." "Humph. Answer my question." The evildoer ignored Roji's respect and snorted coldly. Seeing the man in front of her cause her blood chi to surge up with just a cold snort, Roji's fear of this evildoer deepened. Ruji didn't dare to hide anything and said the truth. "I befriend Miss Leng only because I want to confirm Master's identity. I don't have any ill intentions towards Miss Leng." Hearing this, the evil man's pitch-black eyes stared deeply at Roji, as if he wanted to see into the depths of her heart. Roji felt the evil man's eyes and didn't dare to move. However, her heart was beating so fast that it almost jumped out of her chest. This was his lord, an extremely powerful man. How could a promiscuous Piao Yao be worthy of such a man? Thinking about how Piao Yao coveted her master, Roji felt ashamed. However, she could foresee Piao Yao's tragic future, which also made her fearful mood instantly better. After a long time, only then did the demon restrain his massive aura. Why would a guard of Jilyo City marry the lord of Juda's city as a concubine? He asked. The guards of the Jilyo City Lord's mansion were the elites of the 9 Nether prison. Even if one couldn't say that 100% of the guards were geniuses in meditation, there were at least 80% of them. Ruji couldn't have become a guard of the Jilyo City Lord's mansion by relying on her face. However, Ruji had married the governor of a small city, and she had become his concubine. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. When did the guards of the city lord's mansion in Jilyo City have such a low status? It was a huge humiliation to the city lord of Jilyo City to let the guards of Jilyo City be the concubines of a small city lord. "Master, this subordinate has a secret that is difficult to disclose." Hearing the demon's question, Roji really wanted to pour out all her grievances to her lord. However, she also knew that her lord wouldn't care about such a trivial matter. If she really told him, he would definitely think that she was a waste. With this thought, she didn't dare to say anything. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue walked to Ruji's side and gently helped her up. "Since your master has asked you, why don't you seize the opportunity? If you really suffer, we can help you." Leng Ruoxue had a pretty good impression of Ruji. She was also the first person she had made friends with since she came to the 9 Nether prison. Therefore, she didn't mind being a busybody. As the saying goes, do a good deed every day. Today, her kindness would be shown to Ruji. When Ruji heard Leng Ruoxue's words, she was moved to tears. How long had it been since an outsider, other than the 9 capital city lord, had shown such concern for her? Leng Ruoxue's words, compared to her fear of her master's might, made her feel closer to her. After that, Roji started to narrate her experience to Leng Ruoxue and the demon as if she had found a vent. It turned out that Ruji had become the concubine of the 9 capital city lord because she was guilty. However, she had been set up. The first culprit was naturally Piao Yao, and the other two were the city lords of Jiuhua City and Jiuming City. Thanks back then, Ruji had also accidentally caught a glimpse of Piao Yao and the 9 underworld city lords' sexual relationship. The two of them were afraid that the matter would be exposed and Piao Yao's reputation would be ruined, so they had joined forces to frame her for stealing the city lord's mansion's valuable items. At that time, in order to live, she admitted to the crime and was then sent to a remote small city like the 9 capital city. But even so, Piao Yao still refused to let her go. She didn't know what the other party's purpose was, but he actually forced her to marry the 9 capital city lord. Although Roji was a prideful woman, she was also a woman who knew what was good for her. She knew that in terms of power, she was no match for Piao Yao, so she had to compromise. After Roji had finished her story, Leng Ruoxue stared at her for a long time. When Roji was about to lose her cool, Leng Ruoxue said, "If I'm not wrong, one of the poisons in your body should have been planted by Piao Yao, right?" "Yes, you know there's more than one poison in my body." Roji was shocked by Leng Ruoxue's words. "I didn't know at first, but after I heard about the characteristics of heartbreak, I found that you didn't act up from time to time like the others. This can only prove that there is more than one poison in your body, and that more than two kinds of poisons are mixed together, which just happens to play the role of fighting poison with poison. Therefore, your situation is the lightest among the other people. Leng Ruoxue explained with a smile. Have you been injured before? Leng Ruoxue asked again after a moment. Yes, you're right. After I was injured, my strength was greatly reduced, and I could only submit myself to the 9 capital city master and become his concubine. But fortunately, he was quite good to me. For so many years, if it wasn't for him protecting me, I'm afraid I would have died long ago. Roji heaved a long sigh and said with a grievance. Take it. Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue didn't waste any time and handed Roji a small white jade bottle. Roji carefully opened it and sniffed. She immediately looked at Leng Ruoxue in surprise and asked, This is a healing pill? Yes. Go back and take the healing pill first, then recuperate. Come find me tomorrow, it'll help you detoxify. Leng Ruoxue said calmly. Miss Leng, I have no way to repay your kindness. From now on, Roji is willing to go through water and tread on fire for you, no matter what. Roji was so excited that she knelt down in front of Leng Ruoxue. Get up. I don't like it when people kneel for no reason. Leng Ruoxue said seriously. Yes. Roji quickly stood up to avoid angering Leng Ruoxue. At this moment, Roji heard the demon's cold voice. Roji, while we're in the 9 Nether prison, you'll be in charge of protecting Shuai. This subordinate will do as you command. Roji replied happily. The fact that her lord was willing to entrust her with such an important task meant that everything was in the past. Now that she had Leng Ruoxue and her lord's legs, her future would be much better. When she thought of this, she finally relaxed her tensed mood for many years. The next day, Leng Ruoxue saw Roji, who was extremely excited after her old illness was cured. Roji's strength was even greater after her injuries were healed. Leng Ruoxue was shocked to find out that Roji had the cultivation of an underworld supreme. Such strength was equivalent to a reverent god in the divinity. Miss Leng, thanks to your healing elixir, I actually advanced. I'm really grateful to you. Roji said with great excitement. The future Netherworld Empress healing pill was simply too effective. Not only had it healed her many years of internal injuries, it had also allowed her to advance in rank. She had no idea how she could repay Leng Ruoxue. Even if she were to go through fire and water for her, she felt that it would not be enough to express her gratitude towards Leng Ruoxue. The 9 capital city master, who was standing beside Roji, was also very worried. Sob. Roji's strength had surpassed his. What should he do in the future? In the past, he could still rely on the fact that he could protect Roji and rightfully occupy Roji. Now, her power was already Mingzun's. Why would she need his protection? If so, how could he still have the face to stay by Roji's side? Although Roji had said that she wouldn't despise him and that their relationship would be the same as before, his male chauvinist heart still didn't feel good. Leng Ruoxue, who was watching coldly from the side, saw the two people's completely different expressions and laughed in her heart. Then, she whispered a few words to Roji, who immediately glared fiercely at the 9 capital city lord. When the 9 capital city lord saw this, he immediately acted like a well-behaved little wife. Leng Ruoxue could not help but laugh out loud. However, in the face of Leng Ruoxue's teasing, the 9 capital city lord did not dare to have any thoughts of anger. He could only look at Leng Ruoxue fearfully and pitifully. Woo! He could not afford to offend this person. Chapter 2502, A Self-Aware Servant, 1. Why were women nowadays so powerful? The 9 capital city lord could not understand, but he could deeply feel that the status of men in the future would be even lower. Perhaps, he should get used to it in advance. The 9 capital city lord quickly adjusted his mental state and continued to act weak as he looked at Leng Ruoxue pitifully. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue laughed even more happily. When she was done laughing, she deliberately took out a black pill and handed it to Roji. Seeing that there was only one pill, Ruji felt a bit conflicted. Although she really wanted to beg the future Netherworld Empress to save her useless man, Ruji, who already felt like she owed her husband a lot, couldn't bring herself to do so. The 9 capital city lords saw through Ruji's thoughts and hurriedly urged, hurry up and eat. You'll be at ease after you've cured the poison. He was afraid that Ruji would make them unhappy because of this. After all, their lives were in their hands. Miss Leng, Ruji really wanted to ask if she could give this pill to the 9 capital city lord. However, looking at Leng Ruoxia's beautiful eyes that were as clear as the moon, she couldn't bring herself to say such insatiable words. You what? Hurry up and eat. Leng Ruoxia urged with a smile. Yes. Ruji was helpless. She looked at the 9 capital city lord apologetically. It wasn't that she didn't care about the 9 capital city lord's life, but she really couldn't say it now. If the other party wanted to give her pills to someone else because of her, the consequences would be unimaginable if he got angry. With this apprehension, Ruji could only bite the bullet and eat the black pill. She wanted to wait until she and the future Nether Empress were more familiar with each other, or after she had made a great contribution, she would ask for a reward. This was the only way now. After eating the pill and spitting out a mouthful of foul-smelling black blood, Ruji's face became much rosier. When the 9 capital city lord saw this, his face immediately revealed a sincere smile. He excitedly pulled Ruji into his arms and giggled. At this moment, he really didn't know what would happen to him. Leng Ruoxia's beautiful eyes sized up the two of them who were overexcited. When they had calmed down, they suddenly realized that Leng Ruoxia had another pill in her hand. However, this time, the pill was gray in color. The 9 capital city lord looked at the elixir in Leng Ruoxia's hand, his eyes emitting a green light of desire. This was for him. He didn't dare to think too much, and he didn't dare to snatch it. Ruji did the same. The two of them exchanged a glance and then pretended as if nothing had happened. However, their peeking eyes from time to time revealed their thoughts. Looking at the two of them who had suddenly become pretentious, Leng Ruoxia pursed her lips and chuckled. She then threw the pill in her hand to the 9 capital city lord and said, "Eat it." Yes. The 9 capital city lord was so excited that he didn't know what to say. After he ate the pill, he clearly felt a warm current in his stomach. Not long after, his stomach started to hurt intensely. Then, the 9 capital city lord turned and ran, his face red. City lord, Ruji wanted to follow him out of worry, but she was also afraid that the future Nether Empress would blame her. After hesitating for a while, she pretended to be calm and waited. Leng Ruoxia saw the couple's pretentious expressions and laughed out loud. Ruji was at a loss. "Miss Leng, what are you laughing at?" After hesitating for a while, Ruji couldn't help but ask. "I am laughing at you. He clearly wanted to beg me to save the 9 capital city lord, but he refused to open his mouth." Leng Ruoxia teased. I didn't tease. I just want to ask you to allow me to give him my antidote." Ruji immediately said in embarrassment. She couldn't be so ungrateful. After all, he didn't have any obligation to save her, let alone the 9 capital city lord. "So that's how it is. It's a good thing you didn't say it, because even if you did, I wouldn't have agreed." Leng Ruoxia said in all seriousness. Thanks. After hearing this, Ruji revealed an expression of, as expected. However, she immediately heard Leng Ruoxia say, "Giving him your pill isn't saving him, but harming him." Ah! Ruji's face changed dramatically, and her face blushed. Boo-hoo! She had misunderstood again. No, that's not right. The future Nether Empress was deliberately making her misunderstand. After Ruji understood what was going on, she looked at Leng Ruoxia with a resentful gaze. Leng Ruoxia looked at Ruji's expression and felt playful. She stretched out a slender white finger and lifted Ruji's chin. She said with a perverted look, "Beauty, your little appearance really makes me feel sad." Was she being teased by the future Nether Empress? Finished. Would his lord blame her? After being teased, the first thought that came to Ro Jis' mind was whether her lord, who was protective of his food, would treat her as an eyesore and get rid of her. Woo, if that was the case, wouldn't her treatment have been in vain? At this moment, the 9 capital city lord also returned. As soon as he returned to his room, he saw his Ro being teased, but he didn't dare to say anything. But not long after, an angry voice reverberated in the 9 capital city lord's ears, "Take your woman and get lost." Arg! Rower, let's go. The moment the 9 capital city lord heard this demonic sound, his face turned pale with fear. Then, he grabbed Ruji from Lenruaksha's demonic grasp and ran out with her. It was as if there were evil ghosts chasing after them. Their movements were so fast that it was absolutely unbelievable. Not long after the two of them disappeared, Lenruashue fell into a strong embrace. The face of the owner of his arms darkened as he unhappily carried the restless little woman in his arms. He lowered his head and punished her. The 9 capital city lord and Roji, who had run far away in a hurry, only stopped to catch their breath when they saw that they were safe. Suddenly, the 9 capital city lord seemed to have thought of something and exclaimed, "We're finished. I forgot to thank the future Netherworld Empress and His Highness." "You don't have to thank me verbally. In the future, express it with your actions." Ruji, who already understood Lenruashue well, said after some thought. That's true. There's no sincerity in talking. However, I really didn't expect our future Netherworld Empress to be able to cure the poison. She's really amazing," the 9 capital city lord said with a face full of admiration. "You don't have to tell me that. The future Nether Empress is an alchemist," Roji said with pride. "Ruji, this is all thanks to your wise leadership. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'd have already offended the future Netherworld Empress and Her Excellency. At that time, I'm afraid I won't even know how I died," the 9 capital city lord suddenly said with a face full of affection. It was as if his face was saying that he would listen to everything he said in the future. "It's good that you know. So, when it comes to the matters between the city lord's wife and the city lord, you must not make any mistakes. You must be determined to be on my side, understand?" Roji worriedly urged. "Don't worry, I know what to do," the 9 capital city lord promised. Then, he hesitated for a long time with a conflicted expression, before he said with a desperate expression, I have something to discuss with you." Chapter 2503, A Self-Aware Servant, 2. However, before he could finish his words, he was immediately interrupted by an angry Ruji. "What do you want to discuss with me? Hells, do you have another woman? I'm warning you, if you dare to be disloyal to me, I'll kill you, so that you won't have the chance to touch a woman in this life." Ro Jis' words were so vicious that the 9 capital city lord broke out in a cold sweat. Although he had had a few women in the past, after Roji appeared, those women had become decorations. In addition, Roji was very strict with him, so he had no chance to have an affair. Even the city lord's wife didn't have many chances to see him in a year, let alone other women. However, at this moment, he had to explain what he wanted to say. Otherwise, if he was really wronged by Ruji, he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Dead Sea. After clearing his throat, the 9 capital city lord said with a serious face, "What I want to say has nothing to do with women. I want to talk about Cheng. No matter how useless he is, he's still my child. So, I want to, don't tell me you want to save him. I'm telling you, he's dead for sure. The Lord won't let him go. Don't be stupid. It's not worth it to implicate your family for such a bastard. Moreover, this rascal even wanted to kill his own father. Why do you still care about the life and death of such an inhumane thing?" Before the city lord could finish his sentence, Ruji interrupted him again with a face full of disapproval. She almost cursed him in the street. I know that the unfilial son's death is not to be regretted. I don't dare to ask the Lord to let him go. I just want to ask the Lord to leave his corpse intact. Do you think the Lord will agree? The 9 capital city lord asked carefully. I won tea. You don't understand the Lord, and the Lord has never been soft-hearted to his enemies. It's impossible for young Master Cheng to leave an intact corpse. Ro Ji said with certainty. In fact, she didn't say that it was impossible for young Master Cheng to have a good ending. If it was her, she would not have let that guy off easily either. AI. Since that's the case, I've tried my best. The 9 capital city lord sighed softly. Yes, let's go back. Ro Ji didn't want to talk about this matter anymore. She immediately pulled the 9 capital city lord back to the city lord's mansion. At this moment, the city lords who were like ants in a hot pot in the courtyard of the city lord's mansion immediately surrounded the two of them when they saw them return. The city lord's eyes were fixed on Ruji. The 9 capital city lord was furious and shouted, Damn it, what are you doing? Don't have any ideas about Ro-er. After the 9 capital city lord finished shouting, the other city lords suddenly felt embarrassed. We're not thinking of getting Madame Ro. We just want to ask, what was that breakthrough yesterday? How did you suddenly advance? A city lord embarrassedly voiced out their doubts. After hearing this, the 9 capital city lord looked at the other city lords for a long time before finally saying, You want to know? Yes, yes. The city masters nodded like chickens pecking at rice. I'm not telling you. The 9 capital city lord said in an extremely infuriating manner. After he finished speaking, he pulled Ro Ji and directly returned to her room. The dumbfounded city masters stood in place for a long time without any reaction. In the next few days, the city lords would secretly observe the city lord and Ruji when they had nothing to do. Then, they would gather together and discuss their observations. In the end, they came to a conclusion. The city lord and Ruji were fine. The so-called fine naturally meant that their poison had been cured. Thanks. After coming to such a conclusion, the city lords immediately lost their calm. Because this result was too unexpected, so much so that they couldn't convince themselves to believe this conclusion. However, the truth didn't allow them to deny it. After secretly observing the other party for a few days, these city lords had no choice but to accept and understand this fact. They had really recovered. He was alive and kicking, and he was so full of energy every day. Unlike them, they had to suffer a few times a day, and their faces were getting worse and worse. But when they saw how refreshed and energetic he was, they were really envious, jealous, and hateful. After believing him, the city lords gathered together to discuss. In the end, they couldn't bear it anymore and blocked the 9 capital city lord in a corner. Looking at the unfriendly faces in front of him, the 9 capital city lord's heart trembled. He pointed at the city lords in front of him and said in a trembling voice, You, what do you want? If you dare to touch a single hair on my head, I'm going to shout for help. After saying these words, the 9 capital city lord immediately looked like a good woman who had been taken away by a villain, and stared at the city lords in front of him with vigilance. He wouldn't be afraid if there was only one of them, but if the few of them attacked him together, he really wouldn't be a match. Woo! Someone save him! The 9 capital city lord's imagination was running wild, and before he could finish, he saw the faces of the people opposite him turn black with anger. But in an instant, the originally aggressive city lords immediately hugged the 9 capital city lords' arms and legs without caring about their image and began to cry. Woo! The 9 capital city lord. You have to help us, you can't just leave us in the lurch. Woo! The 9 capital city lord. We're all comrades of war. Howl, you can't just leave us to die. 9 capital city lord, if you don't care about us, well, die in front of you, and you'll say that you're the one who abandoned us. Right. That's right, just say that you abandoned us. If you really don't help us, well, make a declaration to the entire 9 nether prison that we have an affair. The few of them took turns threatening him. The 9 capital city lord was stunned as he listened, but when he came back to his senses, he was also furious. Fuck. These guys are really not human. How could he threaten people like this? And he had an affair with them? In your dreams. Why don't you take a look at what these people are like? Did he really think that he was a pretty boy with soft skin and tender flesh? However, gossip was a fearful thing. The 9 capital city lord really didn't want to create a topic for the people in the 9 nether prison. Although he would gossip sometimes, he couldn't gossip about himself. Thinking of this, the 9 capital city lord was really a little afraid that they would go out and talk nonsense. As the saying goes, a barefooted person is not afraid of wearing shoes. One must know that these guys were people who had an incurable poison in their bodies. Why would they still care about the problem of reputation? But he cared. After struggling for a while, the 9 capital city lord was finally forced to compromise. However, when the 9 capital city lord told them the truth that the other city lords wanted to know, the other party was dumbfounded. Taking advantage of the other party's petrification, the 9 capital city lord quickly slipped away. After returning to Ruji's place, the 9 capital city lord reported to Ruji about what had just happened. It was Ruji's turn to have a black face. They threatened you, and you betrayed Miss Leng and his lord? Do you not want to live anymore? Ruji immediately pulled the 9 capital city lord's ear and said hatefully. Chapter 2504, A Self-Aware Servant, 3, Wu. I don't want to either. They're going to spread the word that they have an affair with me. The 9 capital city lord said with an aggrieved expression. What's wrong with saying that I have an affair with you? You're a man, what are you afraid of? Ruji said angrily. I also want my reputation. The 9 capital city lord explained in a low voice. What kind of reputation do men need? Ruji said in a bad mood. After saying this, she immediately held the city lord's hand and rushed to the inn to report the situation to Leng Ruoxue and the evildoer. After Leng Ruoxue heard this, she looked at the 9 capital city lord with a smile that was not a smile. The demon scoffed coldly and said with a calm expression, So, my identity has been exposed? No, I didn't. No. I didn't dare to tell them that you're the lord. When the 9 capital city lord heard this, he quickly explained in a flattering manner. The cold sweat on his body was uncontrollably flowing more and more. The pressure that these 2 people gave him was really too great. But didn't you tell them that I'm someone they can't afford to offend? The demon's voice seemed to contain icicles, scaring the 9 capital city masters so much that he immediately cried out, Woo! I don't want to say this either. They threatened me. If I don't tell them, they'll say that we have an affair. The 9 capital city lord's voice became softer and softer, and finally, his voice was so soft that it could barely be heard, and his head hung lower. At this moment, he suddenly heard the demon's angry roar, Since you're here, why don't you get the hell in? After the evildoer finished speaking, a black beam of light shot towards the door. With a bang, the solid door was broken into pieces. Then, a few people rolled in. The few of them rolled in like balls and only stopped when they reached the demon's feet. Then, they knelt on the ground and said with trembling bodies, after eavesdropping for a while, they also knew the identity of the man in front of them. In the entire 9 nether prison, there was only one person who dared to be called Lord. This fact made the city lords so nervous that they didn't know where to put their hands. This was especially so for 9 Mountain City Lord, who had once flirted with Leng Ruoxue in a very cheery manner. His head hung even lower, as if he wished he could bury himself in the dust. Woo! The other party's identity not only made him feel great pressure, but also made him want to die. If he committed suicide, would he die more easily? It should be better than falling into the hands of his lord, right? However, it seemed to be too late to think about this now. Because committing suicide in front of his lord, that was definitely asking for a beating. If he really did that, his family would also be in trouble. Therefore, he could only think about it. He would never dare to do it. The city masters knelt for a long time, but the evildoer did not say a word. The longer they knelt, the more terrified they became. Even the city masters of the 9 cities became nervous. After an unknown period of time, the demon finally opened his mouth. However, the first thing he said was to order the other party to think about how to die. When the city lords heard this, their faces turned even paler, and their bodies trembled even more violently. "Why, your majesty, please leave this lowly one's corpse intact." After a city lord took the lead in expressing his stance, he wanted to leave a good impression on his lord. "What about you guys?" The demon's pitch-black eyes started to size up the other people. "My lord, please let this lowly one die a quick death." The Nine-Mountain City Lord made up his mind and shouted. Following that, the city lords all told him the way they wanted to die. After listening to her, the demon's black eyes turned towards Leng Ruoxue and he smiled. "Shuer, how do you want them to die?" "I like to make them wish they were dead." "If they want to die, wouldn't it be too easy on them?" Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. "That's true. Death would be too easy on them." The demon agreed with a smile. Upon hearing this, the city lords' hearts immediately turned cold. "Woo! Can't you even die if you want to? Then let the poison take effect now." They prayed with all their hearts. At this time, the evildoer could not be bothered to look at them. He raised his hand and a gust of wind blew past. A few tall men were thrown out of the window by him. The sound of objects falling to the ground caused cold sweat to form on Leng Ruoxue's forehead. She had recently discovered that evildoer liked to throw people out of the window. Although it was immoral to throw things around, he could not deny that it was quite convenient. With this thought in mind, Leng Ruoxue walked to the window out of curiosity. She saw that the city lords who had been thrown outside had already gotten up from the ground. Although they looked a little disheveled, they did not dare to move from their original positions. Seeing the pitiful looks on their faces, Leng Ruoxue's heart softened and she threw out a small white jade bottle, which happened to hit one of the city lords. Then, she closed the window with a bang and returned to her seat beside the evildoer. "Why do we care if they live or die?" The evildoer knew what Shuer had done. He pulled Leng Ruoxue into his arms and said unhappily. Thanks. As soon as he thought about how those ants dared to covet his woman, he wanted to destroy them. However, Shuer clearly wanted to spare their lives. "Ha ha ha. Don't you think we need a few servants? I haven't experienced the difference between the servants of the Netherworld prison and those in the divine realm. Furthermore, they are the city lords." Leng Ruoxue laughed. "Their status is too low. How can they serve you? Why don't I get the city lords of the 10 major cities to be your servants?" The evildoer was still petty and wanted to replace them. Who asked those guys to court death by flirting with his woman? They were lucky that he didn't kill them immediately. However, Leng Ruoxue didn't agree with him. She said earnestly, "The status of the city lords of the 10 major cities is too high. I can't afford to use them. What if they give me a hard time? What should I do?" "They dare." As soon as he released his aura, Roji, and the 9 capital city master, who didn't dare to make a sound, immediately turned pale. The blood in their bodies started to surge up again. The two of them held their breaths and subconsciously wanted to kneel down and worship him. Fortunately, the demon had retracted his aura at this time, so the two of them felt a little better. However, the two of them were still drenched in sweat, and their bodies trembled in fear. His lord's pressure was too terrifying. Even a new Mingzun like Roji couldn't handle it, let alone the city lord of 9 capital city who was weaker than her. When Ruji and the 9 capital city lord, who was trembling with fear, calmed down, they still couldn't help but want to kneel down because their legs were soft. Leng Ruoxue could only send them back to the city lord's residence. On the way back to the city lord's mansion, the two of them were dazed and at a loss. The next day, Roji received Leng Ruoxue's order and returned to the inn. However, before she could enter the inn, she was blocked by a few city lords who had been guarding the entrance. "What are you guys trying to do?" Roji's face turned black and her tone was extremely unfriendly. "Nothing. Ruji, don't misunderstand, we just want to thank Miss Leng. However, we can't see her, so we want you to pass the message on to her," the 9 mountain city lord said with a fawning look. In fact, they didn't dare to enter the inn at all. No one could bear the anger of the Lord. Humph. It's nice to say, but you're the cowards who don't dare to enter. Roji rudely exposed 9 Mountain City Lord's words. However, he wasn't angry and just laughed foolishly. Ruji's current status wasn't the same as before. Besides, she was much stronger than them. They didn't dare to offend this great aunt. Seeing that the other party was just smiling foolishly, Roji, who could be persuaded but not forced, didn't want to make things difficult for him. She only nodded to show that she understood and walked around the obstacles in front of her, entering the inn. The reason why Len Ruoxue had asked Roji to come over was because she wanted Roji to bring the group of them to the nearby cities for a tour. Roji was very happy to receive this mission. She immediately said that she would make them have a good time. On the way, Len Ruoxue had not walked far before she noticed a few people following her. When she called them over, she asked with a speechless expression, "You've been detoxified, so why are you still following us?" They were already eye-catching enough to begin with, and it would be difficult for them not to attract attention with these slightly famous guys following behind them. When 9 Mountain City Lord heard this, he laughed shyly. "We just want to help you guys out on the way." This was because the 9 Capital City Lord had secretly told them that Len Ruoxue wanted them to be her servants, but his lord was not willing to do so. So, in order to please Len Ruoxue, and at the same time, for the sake of their own lives, they decided that they had to cling on to Len Ruoxue's thick legs. Only then would his lord spare them. They were very clear about this. However, when Len Ruoxue heard 9 Mountain City Lord's words, she frowned and said, "You all came out. If the Castellan of Jiuhua City comes, he won't be able to deal with it alone, so you'd better go back. It's more important to help the 9 Capital City Lord." Hearing this, the city lords were extremely reluctant. In the end, it was the 9 Mountain City Lord who said, "Then let them go back. I'll stay by Miss Ling's side to run an errand." As soon as he said this, he immediately offended the other city lords. They waved their fists in anger and punched 9 Mountain City Lord. In an instant, several tall men were fighting. The moment Len Ruoxue saw this, she gave the others a look, and they immediately left amidst the chaos. It was only when 9 Mountain City Lord was beaten black and blue that the other city lords stopped. However, it was only then that they realized that Len Ruoxue and the others had long disappeared. "Damn it, it's all your fault!" one of the city lords roared. After he finished speaking, the other indignant city lords gave the unlucky 9 Mountain City Lord another beating. After venting their anger, the city lords went back to the 9 Capital City dejectedly. Chapter 2505, I Want to See the Lord. 1. After the city lords returned to the city lord's mansion, the 9 Capital City Lords saw that the few people in front of him were bruised and swollen, their clothes were untidy, and their heads hung low in dejection. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Trash like them wanted to stay by the side of his lord and the future Nether Empress. Why didn't he think about what they had done before? Of course, he didn't think his previous performance was good enough, but he had a good woman. Thinking of Roji, the 9 Capital City Lord's face revealed a tender side. When the other city lords saw his infatuated look, they couldn't help but complain, "Roji isn't here. Don't go into heat. Otherwise, if Roji finds out, you will suffer. You bastard. You're the one in heat. Your whole family is in heat." Upon hearing this, the 9 Capital City Lord immediately retorted. The city lords only snorted coldly in response, and then they all sat down on the chairs in the living room, looking up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Seeing their dead looks, the 9 Capital City Lord was a little mad and couldn't bear it anymore. He roared, "Fuck! Who are you guys trying to show off? All of you, be more spirited." "I can't get my spirits up," one of the city lords said in a low voice. The others didn't say anything, but they all agreed with him. "AI. If his lord were to see you now, I'm afraid his impression of you would be even worse." Suddenly, the 9 Capital City Lord heaved a long sigh and helplessly said. These words made the city lords, who were like eggplants that had been beaten by frost, immediately perk up. Nine Mountain City Lord even specially asked, "What's the situation now? Are you spirited enough? Passable. It would be even better if there weren't any bruises on her face." After the 9 capital city lords sized up the other city lords, he said in a decent manner. When the city lords heard this, they immediately stood up and ran out. When they came back, the injuries on their faces were much lighter and their clothes had been changed. They looked much more energetic than before. Nodding his head in satisfaction, the 9 capital city lord then said in a serious tone, "Although Master and Miss Leng are not in the 9 capital city, we still have something to prepare in advance." "You mean the incident with the Lord of Johua City?" the 9 Mountain City Lord asked carefully. "Yes. We'd better stick to the same story in case the mayor of Johua City asks and we have different answers," the 9 capital city lord said with a serious expression. "What's the point of having a uniform caliber? Wasn't it obvious what the mother and son had done? Can't you just tell me the truth?" 9 Mountain City Lord asked in confusion. "Of course I have to tell the truth about them, but I can't tell you about my lord. Master's identity must be kept a secret," the 9 capital city lord said with a troubled look. However, he was a little excited in his heart. If the Lord of Johua City offended his lord because of this, he would have a hard time in the future. Thinking of this, he was a little excited. "Then let's not mention the Lord's identity. Can't you just say that a few powerful gods took care of the mother and son and saved us?" another city lord said after some thought. "If that's the case, the Lord of Johua City will blame us for it." The 9 capital city lord pretended to be worried. "What are you afraid of? The Lord will definitely help us," the city lord of 9 Mountain City said confidently. With his master as his backer, he had nothing to fear from the city lord of Johua City. "Are you sure? What if I say that the Lord doesn't care about our lives?" The 9 capital city lord did not know where the 9 Mountain City Lord's confidence came from, so he could only pour cold water on his head to wake him up. Thanks, what a brainless fool. Why didn't he think about his identity and what reason his lord had to help him? This. That. It's my honor to sacrifice my life for my lord. The 9 Mountain City Lord pondered for a moment before suddenly raising his aura. Yes, that's right. We're willing to die for our lord." The other city lords also agreed. "At least you understand. Remember, as a part of the 9 Nether prison, it is our duty to sacrifice for our lord. Don't think that our lord will save us. That is not something we can think of, understand?" the 9 capital city lord said sternly. In fact, the reason why he said all this today was because Ruji had asked him to give them some advice, in case they didn't know their own identity and status. After all, in the 9 Nether prison, their lord was the absolute ruler. If their lord wanted them dead, it would be their honor. It had to be said that the reason why the 9 capital city lord would think this way, in addition to his natural reverence for his lord, was largely due to Ruji's brainwashing. Ruji had told him more than once that he had to be loyal to his lord and that if necessary, he would even sacrifice his life for his lord. As a result, the demon had a loyal dog. In the next few days, the Castellan of Jiudu City and the others began to prepare for the arrival of the Castellan of Johua City. First, they set up spies in the places where the Castellan of Johua City would definitely pass by. This way, as long as the Castellan of Johua City appeared, they would be the first to know. However, after waiting for half a month, they still didn't see the mayor of Johua City, which confused the mayor of the 9 capital city and others. "I wonder if the Johua City Lord will come." In the living room of the City Lord Manor, the 9 Mountain City Lord, who was chatting with a few other city lords, suddenly asked. "I don't think so. Unless he really doesn't care about his sister and nephew's life," another city lord replied. "But it's been so many days. If he wanted to come, he should have arrived long ago, right? AI. It would have been better if he had come earlier, otherwise I would always be worried," the 9 Mountain City Lord said gloomily. "I'm the same," a city lord immediately agreed. "Everyone, calm down. I believe that the mayor of Johua City will come. After all, this is related to the honor of our family. As the mayor of one of the top 10 main cities, his dignity can't be blasphemed by anyone. He has to come for the sake of the family. However, once he comes, our good days will come to an end. So, I suggest you enjoy the days when he's not here. The 9 capital city lords said earnestly. AI. That's right. Once the Johua city lord arrives, we'll be in trouble. After listening to the 9 capital city lords' words, the other city lords also sighed. However, it was just as the 9 capital city lord had said. Right now, they really had to be calm, otherwise, the pressure in their hearts would be too great. With this thought in mind, the mayor of 9 capital city and the others didn't wait for the mayor of Johua city to come and question them. Instead, they did what they had to do. On a certain day, the 9 capital city lords were having a banquet with a few other city lords. Suddenly, the few of them who were drinking in high spirits suddenly felt their breathing stop. Their bodies suddenly became heavy. Then, they felt a huge pressure covering the sky above the city lord's mansion. The lord of Johua city. The city lords were shocked. They had indeed come. However, they did not receive any news at all. Chapter 2506, I want to see the Lord, too. Just as this thought crossed their minds, a few black-robed scouts were thrown in front of them. When the city lords saw them, they were extremely shocked. He had been discovered. No wonder. Although the appearance of the Lord of Johua City was impressive, the other castellans didn't want to look too useless. They had to force their blood to rush out and sit up straight with difficulty. However, the difference in strength and their pale faces revealed their true strength. Ha ha ha. These little guys have a backbone, I like it. A man's carefree laughter entered the ears of the 9 capital city lords and the others. Then, they felt the pressure on their bodies lighten by a lot. They were slightly relieved, but they still did not dare to let their guard down. As soon as he finished speaking, an extremely handsome man with a devilish charm appeared in front of the 9 capital city lord and the others. The 9 capital city lords and the others couldn't help but raise their heads, and their expressions changed drastically. Oh my God! Why was this ancestor here? The man in front of him wasn't the lord of Johua City, but he was an even more notorious demon. Of course, calling him a devil didn't mean that his hands were covered in blood, but rather his unique way of doing things. This man was Ming Zi, one of the city lords of 9 Pass City, one of the top 10 main cities. Ming Zi was too egoistic and did things his own way. He could do anything to the people he liked, but as long as there was a chance, he would become enemies with the people he didn't like, regardless of when and where, or even the overall situation. In short, his happiness was the most important. More importantly, it was said that he didn't get along with the castellan of Johua City. However, these secrets were not for the castellan of a small city to know, so they couldn't be sure whether Ming Ze's visit was a good thing or a bad thing for them. Ming Zi looked at the expressions of the people in front of him and laughed. You know me, huh? The voice and smile of the Lord of Dark Swamp City have always been in our hearts. 9 Mountain City lords said in a slightly nauseating manner. You guys think I'm dead? Hearing this, Ming Zi was not happy. No, I didn't. No. I mean, we don't know anyone else, but it's impossible that we don't know the Dark Swamp City Lord. The City Lord of 9 Mountain City saw that Ming Zi was a little unhappy and immediately explained. His forehead was covered in cold sweat from fear. Woo! This lord was not easy to serve. Ming Zi, when are you going to stop causing trouble? Suddenly, an angry voice interrupted, and then a black figure appeared in front of the mayor of Johua City and the others. It was Ming Jian, the mayor of Johua City. Am I causing trouble? Little sword. As if he had been wronged, Ming Zi looked at the Johua City lord with resentment and said sadly. Get lost, don't look at me with that disgusting expression, you lady boy. Nether Sword was so disgusted by Ming Ze's gaze that he had goosebumps. He shook his body exaggeratedly and kept a safe distance from Ming Ziyi. Thanks, however, Ming Ziyi deliberately moved closer to him and even sniffed his head. Then he said seriously, "You smell like a slut. Which woman's bed did you climb into?" "None of your business." Nethersword's face turned red with anger and he couldn't help but roar. Unfortunately, Ming Ziyi didn't care at all. Instead, he warned him earnestly, "Little sword. I advise you to stay away from women. Be careful that you don't get infected with some dirty disease one day, and you'll be the one suffering. You should know that there are no alchemists in the Nether prison. If you are really infected with some disease, you can only wait for death. You get lost." Nethersword was so angry that he almost vomited blood. This damn guy, it's hard not to go against him for a day, right? The key was that he couldn't beat this guy, so every time he was angered by the other party, he could only secretly sulk. He was really afraid that one day, he would be angered to death by the detestable Netherworld swamp. "If I leave just because I told me to, I'd lose face. More importantly, I can't bear to leave you. AI. You also know that my life is quite boring. Other than chatting with you often, I don't have any other fun, so you can't be so cruel as to take away my greatest fun." Ming Ziyi didn't care about Nethersword's anger at all. His words made Nethersword so angry that he vomited blood again. Damn it. So this guy was using her to relieve his boredom. Although he had long guessed that this was a possibility, hearing Ming Ziyi admit it personally made him feel quite uncomfortable. If he could, he really wanted to cut the smiling man in front of him into 8 pieces. Unfortunately, this could only become his greatest wish. Thinking of this, the Nethersword became worried. Looking at the interaction between the two powerful figures in front of them, the 9 capital city lord and the others couldn't help but widen their eyes in surprise. This strange scene was really rare for them. The mayor of the 9 capital city knew the mayor of Jiuhua City better than the other castellans because of his close relationship with the latter. However, he swore that he had never seen the mayor of Jiuhua City so angry and helpless. The mayor of Jiuhua City also believed that the mayor of Jiuhua City was at his most sullen state. This scene was truly too rare. The 9 capital city lord and the others looked on with great interest, dumbfounded. Seeing that he was being watched, the mayor of Jiuhua City was furious. He couldn't help but vent his anger on the mayor of the 9 capital city and the others. "Damn it, tell me clearly, what's going on with my sister and nephew? What happened to them?" Nethersword bellowed in rage, glaring at the city lords with his fiery eyes. What else could it be? Didn't the 9 capital city lords' letter say it clearly? Your younger sister plotted against her husband and your nephew tried to plot against her father, so they were taken care of. Before the 9 capital city lord and the others could answer, Ming Ziyi interrupted them with a calm expression. When the city lords heard this, they nodded their heads. 9 mountain city lord even added, "They're going to kill us too. After all, we were appointed by Jiuhua City. If we are harmed, the mayor of Jiuhua City will have to explain it to Jiuhua City. Therefore, the former mayor's wife and her son not only want to harm us, but they also want to frame you, mayor of Jiuhua City." After hearing this, Ming Ziyi gave the 9 mountain city lord a look of admiration. However, Ming Jian roared with anger, "In that case, I have to thank you all for thinking so much about me." "You don't have to thank me. As long as the Jiuhua City Lord doesn't blame us, we should help each other," the 9 mountain city lord said, pushing his luck. "Well said," Ming Ziyi said in agreement. The Nethersword was even more furious. He thought, "Good my ass. It turns out that the one who was taught a lesson was not your sister." At the thought of this, Nethersword became furious again and roared, "No matter what, you shouldn't have let a few gods take care of our people from 9 Nether prison. This is clearly a provocation from the divine realm to 9 Nether prison. No, I must report this to Jiuhua City. We, the people of Jiuhua Nether prison, cannot be bullied by the people of the divine world. Bullying our people in our territory, isn't this a slap to the face of the 9 Nether prison? Chapter 2507, I Want to See the Lord. 3. Nethersword's face was filled with righteous indignation. He even elevated the matter of his sister being punished to the level of conflict between the two worlds. Hearing this, Ming-Zi rolled his eyes at him. The Castellan of Nine Capital City and the others also looked at the Castellan of Jiuhua City with sympathy. Yes. They felt sorry for the Jiuhua City Lord. Although he seemed happy now, they wondered if he would still be so excited when he found out that it was their master and the others. They were looking forward to it. Why aren't you guys saying anything? Seeing that no one present had any reaction after he had finished speaking, let alone someone echoing his words, Nethersword couldn't help but ask. We don't know what to say. People like us can't get involved in this. Besides, we didn't ask those deities to attack the Lord of Jiuhua City. Madame and Cheng'er wanted to harm them, so they attacked them. The Nine Capital City Lord explained helplessly. He had written all these things in the letter to the Jiuhua City Lord, but the Jiuhua City Lord was playing dumb. The Nine Capital City Lord was helpless. They took action and even captured my sister and her son. Are you not going to stop them? We are all from the Nine Nether prison. What reason do we have to let a few deities interfere in our business? After hearing the words of the Nine Capital City Lord, Nethersword roared with even more anger. Can we stop them? At that time, we were all poisoned and didn't have the ability to fight against those deities. Another city lord couldn't help but ask. Then let them take my sister and Cheng'er. Nine Capital City Lord, you're too useless, you can't even protect your own wife and child. Nethersword once again directed his anger at the Nine Capital City Lord. However, the Nine Capital City Lord was too lazy to pay attention to him and simply lowered his head in silence. Seeing the Nine Capital City Lord like this, Nethersword was furious. He suddenly shouted, Men! Arrest them! A group of fierce-looking guards rushed in. The strength of these guards was naturally not comparable to the guards of the Nine Capital City Lord Mansion. They were all brought here by Nethersword. I say, little Jian, what's the use of venting your anger on them? It's obvious that your sister and nephew have offended someone. Even if you arrest them, the other party won't return your sister and her son. Seeing this, Ming-Zi tried to stop him. They're too useless, letting a few gods show off in our netherworld prison's territory. If we don't punish them for their dereliction of duty, won't they be the disgrace of our netherworld prison? Nethersword once again put a big hat on the heads of the Nine Capital City Lords. However, in response to his words, the Nine Capital City Lords were quite calm, because this was already within their expectations. In fact, the Lord of Jiuhua City's reaction was a lot less intense than what the mayor of Du City and the others had expected. They thought that the Lord of Jiuhua City would attack them without saying anything, but it seemed that he was still wary of someone. If they guessed correctly, it was the Lord of Dark Swamp City who had come to join in the fun. It seemed that they were quite lucky. With the City Lord of Dark Swamp City here, they should be able to keep their lives. At least, they wouldn't be killed by the furious Jiuhua City Lord. As long as their master and the others returned, their mission would be considered complete. With this thought, they felt much more relaxed. Ming-Zi, who had been secretly observing them, saw that the Nine Capital City Lord and the others were obviously relieved. He couldn't help but secretly mutter in his heart. What was going on with these people? Other than the initial shock and panic when they first learned of their arrival, they had actually calmed down very quickly. This was too abnormal. Could it be that they had some kind of backing? With this thought in mind, Netherworld did not stop Netherworld's sword from capturing and imprisoning them. Seeing that Ming-Zi didn't go against him, Nethersword couldn't help but let out a long sigh. At this moment, he heard Ming-Zi ask with a puzzled face, I don't see you care much about this sister of yours usually. Why are you so angry about her today? Thanks, why do you care? Nethersword gritted his teeth and said. I'm not caring. I'm just concerned about you and satisfying my thirst for knowledge. Ming-Zi laughed evilly. Take your thirst for knowledge and get out of my sight. Nethersword couldn't take it anymore. Alright. I'll get lost, but don't you think of getting me back. Because I'm far away. After saying that, Ming Ziyi left while laughing wildly. Of course, before he left, he did not forget to visit the prison where the 9 capital city lord and the others were locked up. Suddenly seeing the troublesome Ming Ziyi in the cell, the 9 capital city lord and the others were nervous. This man had never played by the rules, so he had to be on guard. More importantly, they didn't know why Ming Ziyi was here. Looking at the city masters in the prison cell who looked as if they were facing a great enemy, Ming Ziyi laughed very happily. There was indeed something fishy. Tell me. What identity do those gods have that you fear? Also, weren't you all poisoned? Looking at you now, you're alive and kicking, so don't you think you should give me an explanation? Ming Ziyi smiled very affably. However, the 9 capital city lords felt a trace of coldness from the other party's words. This person was clearly a smiling tiger who ate people without spitting out their bones. The 9 capital city lords and the others looked at each other and tacitly shut their mouths. Seeing them like this, Ming Ziyi wasn't angry. Instead, he was even more certain of his guess. Those gods. Were they brought back by Master? After a moment of silence, just when the 9 capital city lord and the others thought that Ming Ziyi was going to give up on the matter, Ming Ziyi suddenly asked. These words were like thunder to the 9 capital city masters. Oh my God! How did this person know? In an instant, the city lord of 9 capital city and the others stared at Ming Ziyi as if they had seen a ghost. Ming Ziyi saw their expressions and knew what was going on. However, he did not continue to ask and turned to leave the cell. After Ming Ziyi left, the 9 capital city lord and the others were still in a daze. When they finally regained their senses, they looked at each other and said in unison, I didn't say anything. But then, they immediately became worried again. Although they didn't say anything, their expressions betrayed them. What was the difference between this and trying to hide something? However, it didn't seem to be the time for them to be sad. The 9 capital city lord quickly remembered the important matter and sent a message to Ruji. When Ruji received the message from the 9 capital city lord, Len Ruoxue and the others were having fun in the nearby cities. After hearing Ruji's report, Len Ruoxue and the others didn't rush back. Instead, they continued to play with composure. But they weren't in a hurry. Someone was so anxious that he was about to get angry. Nether Sword had been waiting in the city lord's mansion for a long time, but he still didn't see the deity who had captured his sister and nephew. He was so frustrated that he was like a bomb that would explode at any moment. Chapter 2508, Are you willing to let me die? 1. He couldn't get anything out of the city lord of 9 capital and the others, and they all said they didn't know anything. What was more infuriating was that Ming Ziyi, who lived in the inn, came to the prison every day, saying that he had a heart-to-heart talk with the city lord of 9 capital and the others. Every time he wanted to use torture to interrogate those city lords, he would be obstructed by Ming Ziyi in all ways. Ming Jian hated Ming Ziyi to death, but the 9 capital city lord and the others were very grateful to him. After all, Ming Ziyi was also protecting them, so in just a few days, they had formed a friendship with Ming Ziyi like that of comrades. Didn't you get lost? Why do you still come back every day? After enduring for several days, Nether Sword finally couldn't take it anymore. One day, he blocked Ming Ziyi in the cell and questioned him angrily. I didn't come back to see you. Besides, I didn't take the initiative to appear in front of you. You were the one who took the initiative to approach me. When Ming Ziyi said this, he really felt as wronged as he could be. Nether Sword was infuriated by his words, but he couldn't do anything to Ming Ziyi. He could only glare at him. I say, little Jian Jian. You're one of the 10 great main cities, after all. You can't just rely on your high position and power to bully these small cities' city lords. This isn't right. Seeing that Nether Sword was at a loss for words, Ming Ziyi continued. I can't be bothered with you. Nether Sword said angrily. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Seeing that the nether sword was so easily dismissed by him, Ming Ziyi felt no sense of accomplishment. This guy was getting more and more angry. After Ming Ziyi left in anger, he turned to look at the 9 capital city lord and the others and asked, "When are they coming back?" "I don't know." The 9 capital city lord didn't even need to think to know who he was asking about. Not knowing the exact time, Ming Ziyi also turned around and left. A few days later, Leng Ruoxue and the rest had a great time and finally returned to the 9 capital city. The news of their return was sent to the 9 capital city lord's mansion and Ming Ze's inn at the first moment. Leng Ruoxue and the rest had just returned to the inn and entered their rooms when they heard a knock on the door. Ruji went to open the door. When she saw the person standing outside, she was dumbfounded. Why was this guy here? The 9 capital city lord had not told him that this person had also come to the 9 capital city. However, wherever this person went, it would always be very lively. "I want to see the lord." Seeing Ruji's dazed expression, Ming Ziyi impatiently said, "Come in." Roji was hesitating to go in and report when she heard the voice of a demon coming from the room. Roji made way for Ming Ziyi to walk in. As soon as he entered the room, Ming Ziyi saw the demon and knelt in front of him with joy. He said excitedly, "My lord, you're finally back." When Ming Ziyi said this, his eyes were filled with tears and even his voice was a little choked. However, the demon frowned when he saw him. He couldn't figure out why this guy would appear here. Looking at the two's expressions, Leng Ruoxue laughed to herself. These two fellows, one was so excited to see his own superior that he was almost incoherent, but the other clearly did not like the other. What was going on? The fire of gossip in Leng Ruoxue's heart was suddenly burning. She was rather curious. At this moment, the demon also lazily said, "What are you doing here?" "Come and see my lord." Ming Ziyi said matter-of-factly. "Thanks me. You know him in the 9 capital city?" The demon narrowed his eyes. "I don't know, I just came here to try my luck." Ming Ziyi was very honest. "Then you're done trying your luck. You can get lost now," the demon said in an unpleasant tone. "My lord, how can you treat me like this?" "Woo. I'm not leaving. I won't leave even if I die." After listening to the evildoer's words, Ming Ziyi seemed to have changed into a different person. He changed his image of a devilish handsome man and instantly turned into an invincible baby. He hugged the evildoer's thigh tightly and cried. Everyone in the room was dumbfounded by this scene. What was going on? Everyone was at a loss. This man looked normal before, but in the blink of an eye, he had overturned the noble and handsome temperament they had in their hearts. Everyone was disappointed. However, Leng Ruoxue found this scene extremely funny. The demon's expression, on the other hand, was extremely ugly. The demon wanted to shake off the hands that were holding his legs, but Ming Ziyi was too tight. He couldn't break free. His face darkened even more. "Let go." The demon gritted his teeth. His dark eyes were burning with flames of anger, as if he wanted to burn the other party into ashes. It was really too embarrassing, wasn't it? Was it too late to say that he didn't know this guy? The demon thought worriedly. Unfortunately, he had underestimated Ming Ze's courage and shamelessness. Ming Ziyi hugged the evildoer's leg and said shamelessly, "I won tea. I won't let go even if I die." After saying this, Ming Ze's eyes were filled with tears, and his little face looked as if he had been wronged. Everyone covered their faces. They really couldn't take it. Ruji, who knew Ming Ziyi, stayed far away to avoid being classified as the same as the city lord. "I've long heard that the city lord of Dark Swamp City doesn't play by the rules and likes to do as he pleases." Today, he had finally witnessed it and widened his horizons. Ruji was sweating like a waterfall. Sometimes, she even felt that wishes were beautiful, but reality was absolutely cruel. Although the legendary Dark Pool City Master was not very reliable, he was still pretty. He was also the #1 figure that all the women in the 9 nether prisons secretly fantasized about. If those women knew this side of the Dark Pool City Master, what would the women of 9 nether prison think? Thinking of this, she was suddenly filled with anticipation. However, she had heard of how terrifying the City Lord of Dark Glade City was, so she only dared to think about it in her heart and did not have the courage to say it out loud. Then you can go to hell. After an unknown amount of time, he finally couldn't bear it anymore and said. When Ming Zi heard this, tears immediately welled up in his eyes. He then choked and said, "This subordinate does not dare to disobey Master's orders, Wu." "But Master, can you bear to see me die?" Hearing such shameless words, Uncle Long and the others couldn't take it anymore. Leng Ruoxue also sincerely felt that among the people she knew, those who liked to act coquettishly, cutely, and pitifully were simply too weak when compared to this person in front of her. This guy was the ancestor of playing the fool. "I'm very willing to do so." The demon gritted his teeth and the fire in his black eyes burned even more fiercely. If it was not for Ming Ze's thick skin, anyone else would have been roasted. "Master, you're lying. It's wrong to lie. How could you bear to see me die? I'm so cute," Ming Zi said in disbelief. Chapter 2509, Are You Willing to Let Me Die? 2. Uncle Long and the others looked like they were about to vomit. This guy was really strong. Their respect for him was like the waves of the river, endless. The demon gritted his teeth and glared at Ming Zi for a long time, feeling helpless. Compared to this guy's shamelessness, his training was still not enough. Evildoer admitted that he had lost and turned to Leng Ruoxue for help. Leng Ruoxue could not help but laugh when she saw the demon's pitiful expression. He didn't think that there would be someone he couldn't handle. Hee. Could this be considered as everything having its weakness? However, Leng Ruoxue couldn't just stand by and watch the demon be at his wit's end. So, after the demon cried for help, she immediately walked over and sized up Ming Zi. For some reason, Ming Zi, who had a calm expression on his face, felt goosebumps all over his body from Leng Ruoxue's probing gaze. His intuition told him that this woman was very dangerous. But in order not to lose in terms of momentum, he didn't show any nervousness on his face. After sizing him up for a while, Leng Ruoxue smiled and looked at Ming Ze's hand. "How should I address you?" "Ming Zi, the City Lord of 9 Pass City." Ming Zi took the initiative to introduce himself while secretly guessing Leng Ruoxue's identity. Could this be the legendary future Nether Empress? Mu Li had only told a few of his lord's trusted subordinates that his lord had found him a wife, and Ming Zi was one of them who knew the truth. Hence, he had heard about Leng Ruoxue a long time ago. He had also heard some things about the Netherworld Empress from the City Lord of Muley City. However, no one had seen the Netherworld Empress' true appearance except for the City Lord of Muley City. In the entire room, other than Ro Ji, there was only this devastatingly beautiful woman in front of him. It was also because of this that Ming Zi easily associated Leng Ruoxue and the Netherworld Empress with them. However, being a cautious person, he didn't directly call out to them. Otherwise, if he made a mistake, he would be the one who would be embarrassed. "Dark Swamp City Lord, the man you're hugging is my man." After knowing the other party's name, Leng Ruoxue nodded her head and said with a serious expression. "Ah. He's my lord." Ming Zi was stunned for a moment and quickly reacted. He was sweating and couldn't help but wonder what this person meant. However, when he heard Leng Ruoxue say that his master was her man, Ming Zi finally confirmed Leng Ruoxue's identity as the Netherworld Empress. Instantly, his gaze towards Leng Ruoxue turned fiery. She was the future Netherworld Empress that he had long heard of. "I finally saw one alive today." One must know that they had been looking forward to seeing the future Netherworld Empress for a long time. It was a pity that they never had the chance to see her. If it wasn't for the fact that the timing wasn't right, Ming Zi really wanted to suggest taking a photo with Leng Ruoxue and signing an autograph as a memento. "Your lord's first profession is my man, so quickly let go. No one is allowed to touch my man." Leng Ruoxue suddenly roared in a menacing manner. "I'm not just anyone." Ming Ziyi was not the least bit afraid of Leng Ruoxu's anger. Instead, he spoke with confidence. Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue could not help but choke. This fellow was really indescribable. At this moment, the kind Uncle Long helped Leng Ruoxue out of her predicament. "You're not just anyone, but you're also an outsider. Young man, the consequences of snatching my Shui heir's man are very miserable. You have to treasure your life." Uncle Long's words were sincere and earnest, but Leng Ruoxue and Ming Ziyi broke out in cold sweat. Leng Ruoxue couldn't help but sigh. Today, she realized that Uncle Long's imagination was very strong. "I treasure my life, and I have no intention of snatching a man from the Netherworld Queen. Don't worry. I like women, I'm not interested in men," Ming Ziyi said seriously. Following that, he looked at Leng Ruoxue, then at his master. He steeled his heart and said, "I can't bear to leave my lord, so I'm willing to try any method that can allow me to stay by my lord's side. If you don't let me hug his lord's thigh, how about hugging yours? Thanks, you're looking to die." Hearing this, the evildoer flew into a rage. Uncle Long and the others also looked at Ming Ziyi sympathetically, as if he was looking for death. Unexpectedly, Ming Ziyi still had a fearless expression and said, "Well, see. The Netherworld Empress definitely won't let me hug her thigh, so the only person I can hug is his lord." Fine, he was still in the right. Leng Ruoxue was speechless and helpless. Towards Ming Ziyi, she also felt a trace of power not following her heart. Leng Ruoxue gave the evildoer a look that said "You're on your own," and did not want to bother with this pair of loving master and subordinate. "I'll go rest first." Out of sight, out of mind. Leng Ruoxue decided to leave first. "Shui, the demon called out pitifully as he watched Shui's back view enter the room. However, Leng Ruoxue didn't even turn her head. Seeing that Shui had left, Uncle Long and the others also left tactfully. The master of the Dark World's joke wasn't that good to watch. After everyone had left, the evildoer cast a barrier between him and Ming Ziyi. Then, he shouted with a dark face, "What the hell are you doing?" Although Ming Ze's personality was a little strange, it was rare to see him like this today. Or it could be said that Ming Ziyi almost did not dare to act like this in front of him. Therefore, Ming Ze's behavior today was definitely abnormal. "The city lord of Muley City told me to do so. He told me to report to the lord when no one was around." Ming Ziyi, who was afraid of being beaten up, betrayed Mu Li without even blinking. "Was he the one who asked you to act as the bottom?" The demon gritted his teeth and secretly hated him. "The city lord of Muley City asked me to use some extreme methods. There were so many people in the room just now, so I had no choice but to sacrifice my own appearance." Ming Ziyi explained with an expression of, "I don't want to either." "Damn it, did you just sacrifice your body?" The demon glared at Ming Ziyi and said viciously. He had scared everyone, making them think that there was an abnormal city lord in the 9th Nether prison. Hee hee. Unusual times call for unusual measures. "You're a magnanimous person, my lord, so you won't blame me, right?" Ming Ziyi said with a cheeky smile. "Speak. Why did Mu Li send you here? Why didn't he come himself?" The demon was too lazy to argue with this guy in front of him and went straight to the point. The city lord of Muley City was going to come, but he received news on his way here, so he changed his route and went to the Dead Sea. Before he left, he sent me a message and asked me to come here and see if the person who brought the deities to 9 Nether prison was your highness. By the way, I came here with the Jiuhua City Lord," Ming Ziyi reported. "Are there any movements on the other side of the Death Sea?" The demon asked directly when he heard that Mu Li had gone to the Dead Sea. "Not yet," Ming Ziyi said honestly. "And, don't let Shuai know about the matters at the Death Sea." The demon nodded and warned. "Yes. My lord, the Castellan of Jiuhua City." Ming Ziyi was about to talk about the Castellan of Jiuhua City when he heard a loud bang behind him. He stood up immediately and saw the Castellan of Jiuhua City breaking in through the array formation with an aggressive look. Chapter 25:10, Are you willing to let me die? 3. This was definitely the rhythm of seeking death. The Johua city lord entered the room and immediately yelled, Where are they? All of you, get out here. Hearing the roar, Leng Ruoxue and the rest walked out of the room. Who is this? Such a powerful aura. Seeing this, Uncle Long couldn't help but say, his resolute face full of ridicule. Are you the gods who came to the Nether prison? Nether Sword asked loudly when he saw Uncle Long and the others. That's right. Who are you? Uncle Long asked calmly. I'm the city lord of Johua City. Nether Sword shouted as if he was afraid that no one could hear him. What brings you here, Lord of Johua City? Leng Ruoxue asked calmly before finding a chair to sit down. Her voice immediately attracted Nether Sword's attention. The moment he saw Leng Ruoxue, Nether Sword was stunned. Was this a woman from the divine realm? She was indeed a rare beauty. Humph. I heard you captured my sister and nephew. Although the beauty in front of him had made him fall in love with her, Nether Sword was still a very rational person. He knew what was important, so he naturally had to deal with his sister and nephew first. Yes, they are indeed in our hands. Leng Ruoxue nodded and replied honestly. I want you to release them now. Hearing this, Nether Sword immediately made a request. On what basis? Who do you think you are? If I let her go just because you want me to, I'll lose face. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile that was not a smile. She was truly suspicious that this bitch in front of her was feeling too good about herself and thought too highly of herself. I'm the Lord of Johua City. Nether Sword shouted at the top of his voice. To be looked down upon by a beauty was absolutely a great humiliation that he could not bear. So what? I'm not under your jurisdiction. Leng Ruoxue still looked as if she did not care. Do you know where we are? If I tell the outside world that you gods have captured our people, do you think you can leave the Nether prison alive? Nether Sword threatened with wide eyes. This. I think you can try. Leng Ruoxue suddenly laughed. Instantly, it was like 100 flowers had bloomed, dazzling the eyes of everyone in the room. The demon who had been inside the array formation looked gloomy when he saw Shuai'er's beautiful smile. However, he didn't come out of the array formation. He wanted to see what the famous Lord of Johua City would do. Of course, he also blamed the Johua City Lord for making Shuai'er smile. Seeing this, Ming Ziyi wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and felt sorry for the Johua City Lord. This person. If he wanted to die, he would choke to death even if he drank water. Now, he deeply felt that the Lord of Johua City was such a person. Especially when he accidentally caught a glimpse of his master's sinister black eyes that were spewing fire, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. At this moment, he was blocked by his lord in the barrier. He didn't even have the chance to signal Nether Sword with his eyes. However, even if he had the chance, he probably wouldn't do it. Thanks, damn it, it was already very loyal of him not to hit Nether Sword when he was down, and he still wanted to help him. In your dreams. The two people inside the barrier each had their own thoughts on their minds, while the pitiful fellow outside the barrier who did not know the truth was enraged by Leng Ruoxue's words. Nether Sword's face darkened as he pointed at Leng Ruoxue and shouted fiercely, Woman, I'll let you know the consequences of pissing me off. You want to fight? One-on-one or group fight? Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue raised her brows and asked calmly. Humph. Fighting with a woman, and you even need to gang up on her, isn't that a complete disgrace to us men? Nether Sword said with a dark expression. You're wrong. You should be saying that fighting with a woman is a disgrace to all men. Leng Ruoxue corrected him in a serious manner. What, are you afraid? As long as you beg for mercy, I can let you go. Hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, Nether Sword's anger subsided. Instead, his tone carried a hint of teasing. Did I say I was scared? Leng Ruoxue retorted. If you're not afraid, then why would you say that? Nether Sword asked angrily. I'm just correcting you. Since you don't want to hear it, I'll take it back. A group fight or a one-on-one fight, you choose. Leng Ruoxue was very generous. Like I said, is there a need to gang up on a woman? Nether Sword roared. Did I say that you would gang up on us? Leng Ruoxue said as she came to a sudden realization. Hearing this, Nether Sword was stunned. Did this mean that the other party wanted to gang up on him? He looked at the strength of the other party. Other than the majority of them being divine sovereigns, there were a few whose strength he could not tell. As such, he was not confident. Although he was a Ming Zun, and the one who would have the advantage in a fight with a god in the Nether prison was a Ming cultivator, he could not stand being beaten by a group of people. After some thought, Nether Sword could only confirm, I choose a one-on-one fight. Alright then. I'll let Uncle Long fight you. Leng Ruoxue turned her body slightly and released Uncle Long, who had been rubbing his hands together and had a fierce look in his eyes. Nether Sword was dumbfounded when he realized that the person he was fighting was not the woman in front of him. Had he been tricked? Fuck. He had thought that the person who wanted to fight him one-on-one was this woman. In a moment of carelessness, Nether Sword asked the question in his heart, aren't you the one fighting me one-on-one? Castellan of Jiuhua City, I'm only a divine emperor. Are you sure you want to fight me one-on-one? Wouldn't it be bad for your reputation if word got out? You're the lord of a city, yet you're challenging someone with the power of the Emperor of the Dead to a one-on-one fight. You're really something. Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. Nether Sword was speechless. It would not be nice if this matter was spread. No matter how thick-skinned he would drown in the saliva of others. In particular, he still had a few arch-enemies, one of whom was in the 9 capital city. He was afraid that he could not hide this matter even if he wanted to. As such, he had to be even more careful. Then let Uncle Long do it. Nether Sword agreed after hesitating for a while. Seeing that Nether Sword was a rather straightforward person, Leng Ruoxue's impression of him changed slightly. It seemed like this person was not without his merits. Seeing that his opponent had agreed, Uncle Long was extremely excited. He had long wanted to compete with Ming Zun of the 9 Nether prison, but he had never had the chance. Dongfang Yu and the others, who saw that Uncle Long had the chance to fight, were even more envious and jealous of him. However, Dongfang Yu and the others were staring at Nether Sword with burning eyes. They could only hope that this guy could take a beating so that they would have a chance to attack. Otherwise, they would regret it for the rest of their lives. As for Nether Sword, who didn't understand why the other party's gaze suddenly became so passionate, he had no idea that he was about to experience the most painful experience of his life. At this moment, he still had an excited expression. Therefore, it had to be said that ignorant people were the happiest. She thought of herself as a person with a rather virtuous heart. Naturally, Leng Ruoxue was unwilling to see their battle destroy the public property of this inn. After all, they still had to stay here for a few days. Chapter 25:11 Fatal Blow 1. Thus, after some thought, Leng Ruoxue decided to have the duel at the 9 capital city lord's residence. Nether Sword had no objections to this. On the contrary, he was very happy that these people in front of him had chosen the city lord's mansion, because it had now been occupied by him. It could be considered his base camp, and he also dreamed of capturing all these people there. The battlefield shifted very quickly. After Leng Ruoxue and the rest moved to the city lord's residence, the demon and Ming Ziyi followed suit. However, the two of them remained silent and did not alert anyone. When the battle began, both Uncle Long and Ming Jian could feel the power of their opponent, especially Ming Jian. He couldn't believe that the man in front of him had such a strong body. It should be known that when gods fought, they relied more on divine skills. That was why their bodies were much weaker than those of meditation cultivators. The advantage of meditation cultivators was in close combat. However, in this exchange, Dark Sword found that his advantage had been reduced. In desperation, he could only use dark skills as well. However, compared to Uncle Long's godly skill, the powerful dark skills that Dark Sword could use were pitifully few. In this case, he could only give up on dark skills and focus on close combat. Nether Sword had been quite depressed in this battle, and so was Uncle Long. As a beastie who had cultivated to the pinnacle of the immortal realm, there was no need to doubt the toughness of his physical body. In addition, his innate divine skill was not weak either. Against any reverent god, his advantage would be huge. Unfortunately, when he encountered meditation, he felt as if his divine skill had hit a hard bone that was hard to chew. In terms of body hardness, he had no advantage either. As such, the battle between the two of them was at a loss. It didn't take long for wounds of different degrees to appear on both of their bodies. However, Uncle Long wasn't afraid of getting injured. Seeing that his injuries were a little serious, he immediately threw a pill into his mouth. In an instant, all his injuries were healed. Seeing this, Nether Sword was so angry that he vomited blood. Fuck. You even brought this? Wasn't this cheating? You're cheating. In a fit of rage, Nether Sword accused him. What, can't I take medicinal pills to heal? Come. Come. Let's continue. Uncle Long said with a smile. He didn't take the furious Nether Sword seriously. Of course not. You're not fair to our battle. Nether Sword roared with grief and indignation. Then, for the sake of fairness, you can also eat it. Is that okay? Uncle Long said helplessly with a pampering expression on his face, as if he was coaxing an insensible little child. However, his words made Nether Sword even more depressed. He wanted to eat it, but he had to have it. The Nine Nether Prison wasn't like the Divine World, where alchemists were everywhere. Where could he get so many healing pills that he could eat at any time? Even if he did, he would save it for when he was seriously injured. If he used it now, how wasteful would he be? Yes. In his eyes, Uncle Long's actions just now were a waste. The two of them were clearly not seriously injured, so why did they take medicinal pills? No. You can't take any pills. Thinking of the other party's wastrel behavior, Nether Sword, who knew how to live a good life, firmly disagreed. You don't have to eat it, but I must eat it. Uncle Long was stubborn. You don't want to fight anymore? Nether Sword was overjoyed and took the opportunity to ask. He could tell that Uncle Long was tough, so he didn't want to continue fighting with him. Thanks Uncle Long, who had also seen through his thoughts, would not let him have his way so easily. Uncle Long smiled and said, you don't have to fight, but you have to admit defeat. On what basis? Hearing this, the Nether Sword was immediately enraged. Fuck. They were really bullying him. This was his territory. How embarrassing would it be to be bullied in his own territory? Just because you don't want to fight. Uncle Long's words were so righteous that it was clear that he wouldn't stop until he angered the other party to death. When the spectators saw Uncle Long's reaction, they couldn't help but cover their faces and look at Len Ruoxue silently. In their hearts, they couldn't help but think, indeed, one is marked by one's proximity to vermilion. Looking at Uncle Long's experienced rogue expression, it was obvious that he had been influenced for a long time and was extremely dark. Slander. This was blatant slander. No matter how careful everyone was, Len Ruoxue could see the expression on their faces that said Uncle Long has been led astray by me. How detestable. The furious Len Ruoxue couldn't take it anymore and jumped to the center of the arena. Seeing that she had come up, Uncle Long hurriedly chased her down and said with a protective look, Shuer, why are you up here? Get down, this is none of your business. Don't fight with me. Uncle Long, you can go and rest. Let me fight this person one-on-one. Len Ruoxue had said the words that Uncle Long hated to hear the most. Knowing Len Ruoxue's temper, Uncle Long didn't struggle and obediently left the room. Before he left, he had been looking at Len Ruoxue with a face full of hidden bitterness. That expression of his was really aggrieved. Seeing that Len Ruoxue had entered the arena, Ming Ziyi, who had been observing the situation from the shadows, could not help but ask worriedly, Your Highness, the future Nether Empress has entered the arena. Should we appear and stop her? If you want to go, go ahead. I won't stop you. The demon said indifferently. Ugh. Hearing his lord's nonchalant tone and seeing the obvious go if you want to die expression on his face, Ming Ziyi finally gave up the idea of stopping him, but his heart was hanging in the air. If the future Netherworld Empress were to lose even a single hair, his lord must not vent his anger on him. But very quickly, Ming Ziyi realized that his worry was clearly unnecessary. This was because the future Netherworld Empress, who looked like a harmless little rabbit on the outside, had a fierce tiger living inside. No, it should be a tigress. At that moment, Nether Sword, who was in the center of the battlefield, saw the woman who had suddenly appeared in front of him. He said in a daze, "What, you want to fight me one-on-one?" "That's right." Len Ruoxue nodded. "Didn't you just say?" Nether Sword frowned. Just as he was about to return Len Ruoxue's words to her, he was interrupted by her. "With your status, of course it's embarrassing to challenge a woman who's not as strong as you, but I'm different. I'm not as strong as you, and I'm a woman, so it's not a big deal to lose. Of course, if you're afraid that you'll lose too badly, you can also refuse." Len Ruoxue smiled evilly and taunted. Her words were definitely a direct provocation to men. If any man were to reject her, that would truly be embarrassing. As for Nether Sword, who had been tormented by Uncle Long to the point that his temper would flare up at any moment, he naturally couldn't take this provocation. "You bastard! I'm scared." The Nether Sword was furious. "If you're not afraid, then come. Don't waste time." Len Ruoxue urged. "Good. Since you're a woman, I'll let you have 3 moves." Nether Sword said, pretending to be graceful. "Don't, I'll let you win. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to make a move." Len Ruoxue said with a face of sincerity. Chapter 25:12 Fatal Blow 2. However, to a man, her words were even more insulting than the provocation from before. After hearing this, the anger in Nether Sword's heart rose, and his voice became a little shrill. "Damn it. What an arrogant woman, who wants you to give in? I'm doing this for your own good. Otherwise, if you can't even make one move, how can you have the face to stay in the 9 Nether prison?" Len Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes as she spoke in an extremely kind manner. "This is my business." Nether Sword was so angry that he stomped his feet. Then, he shouted angrily, "Woman, I'll still say the same thing. I'll give you 3 moves, so hurry up and make the first move." "All right. Since you insist, then I won't be unreasonable," Len Ruoxue said helplessly. With that, she quickly gathered a trace of fiery red divine power in her hand. The divine power was red with a hint of purple. It was thinner than a strand of hair, but the temperature was frighteningly high. As soon as the divine power appeared, Uncle Long and the others immediately retreated a few steps back to safety with cautious expressions. They were not worried that Shuai'er's Shin power would affect them, but the Shin power's temperature was too high. They did not want to become roasted pigs. However, the Nether Sword didn't know the truth. He didn't feel anything other than the heat. Even when the thread of fiery red divine power in Len Ruoxue's hand floated towards him, he did not have any countermeasures. "Your divine power is only this little," Nether Sword said speechlessly. "This is the essence," Len Ruoxue said with a smile and reminded him, "Defend well." However, Nether Sword, who was also very confident in himself, did not take Len Ruoxue's words to heart. He was extremely unconcerned that this bit of divine power was not a threat to him at all. However, when the Shin power truly hit him, he felt an intense pain in his chest. Damn it! How was this possible? The Nether Sword was shocked. However, he quickly hid this trace of shock, and before he had time to retaliate, he immediately felt as if his body was on fire. His entire body was burning, and an intense pain that drilled into his heart and bones began. Ah! Nether Sword, who had been holding it in, finally couldn't help but roar. Ming Ziyi, who was secretly observing from afar, naturally did not know how much pain Ming Jian was in. What he could not understand was how that little flame could cause Ming Zun, who had thick skin and thick flesh, to cry out in pain. This was truly unbelievable. Ming Ze's heart was full of doubts, but what shocked him even more was what followed. Not long after, Nether Sword, who was rolling on the ground in pain, had flames that were half the height of a person burning on his body, which made Ming Zi extremely frightened. How did this happen? This flame naturally couldn't be the Nether Sword's own natal flame. Who asked them to be of the dark attribute? It was impossible for them to have such a thing. In that case, the flame could only belong to the future Nether Empress. However, was it possible for a small flame to pose such a huge threat? Ming Ze's face was full of disbelief. At this time, he turned to look at his lord's reaction, only to find that his lord's face was calm. He could not tell whether his lord was happy or angry. Now, he had no idea and could only continue to watch. At this moment, Nether Sword's cries of pain became softer and softer until nothing could be heard anymore. Ming Zi was shocked. This guy couldn't have been burned to death, right? He felt that it was possible no matter how he thought about it. Ming Zi was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Thanks Wu, poor Nether Sword. He was right to sympathize with that guy. In fact, at this moment, not only did Ming Zi sympathize with Nether Sword, but Uncle Long and the others also expressed their condolences to him. AI. Next time, grow some eyes and don't offend women. In particular, women with powerful life flames could not be offended. Although the Flame Master might not be as strong as you, as long as a small spark touched you, it would be enough to take your life. Whether you could survive or not, of course, it would still depend on the mood of the Flame Master. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue, who had been looking innocently at the man on fire, suddenly muttered to herself sadly, "Did I hit you too hard? I didn't do it on purpose." With that, she hurriedly retracted her natal flames. At this moment, Nether Sword's entire body had turned black, and a thick layer of cocoon had formed on the surface of his body from the heat. He had also fainted. When Uncle Long and the others heard Leng Ruoxue's words, their foreheads were filled with black lines. They all thought to themselves, "Little girl, if it's a fever, then so be it. Don't pretend to be innocent. There are no outsiders here." However, how could Leng Ruoxue not show her innocence? She even deliberately stepped forward and kicked the tied-up human-shaped charcoal, asking softly, "Hey! Jiuhua City Lord, are you still alive? If you're still breathing, make a sound." Shua. The Castellan of Jiuhua City is already unconscious, so it's no use calling him that. Uncle Long, who could not stand it anymore, could not help but remind him. It was not that he thought that Shuaer's flames could not kill Ming Zun, but he knew that Shuaer had definitely been merciful and would not burn this fellow to death. Then how about this? As soon as Leng Ruoxue finished speaking, a huge water ball appeared in her hand and she threw it at Nether Sword. Unfortunately, the Nether Sword had yet to wake up. Leng Ruoxue hung her head in dejection and disappointment. Uncle Long couldn't bear to see Shuaer disappointed, so he kindly offered a healing pill and stuffed it into the mouth of the Jiuhua City Lord. One had to admit that the quality of the pills Leng Ruoxue produced was guaranteed. Less than a minute after he took the pill, Nether Sword woke up. As soon as Nether Sword opened his eyes, he saw Uncle Long's familiar face while he was still in a daze. Then, he heard Uncle Long say to him very kindly, "You're awake. I just gave you a healing pill, remember to pay me for it." Money for medicine? It was only then that Nether Sword suddenly recalled what had happened. The gaze he used to look at Leng Ruoxue was filled with fear, especially when he saw that Leng Ruoxue was actually filled with joy as she walked towards him. His little heart instantly started to beat wildly. What are you doing? You're not coming over." In an instant, Nether Sword had turned into a man from a good family who was about to be robbed by an evil person. His dark little face was pale. It was obvious that he had been scared out of his wits by Leng Ruoxue. When Leng Ruoxue heard his words, the grievance on her face deepened. "Are you afraid of me? Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you." I'm only a divine emperor, what are you afraid of? The hidden bitterness in Len Ruoxu's tone almost made Uncle Long and the others believe her. However, the more she said this, the deeper the fear in Nethersword's heart grew. You bastard! You're only a divine emperor. Fortunately, you're a divine emperor. If you become a reverent god, would you still be alive? Nethersword muttered to himself with a face full of fear. With every step Len Ruoxue took, he wriggled backward. It wasn't that he didn't want to leave, but the shell on his body was too hard, and he couldn't break free. Don't dodge. I want to help you. Len Ruoxue was disappointed to see that Nethersword was afraid of her so quickly. Wasn't this guy the city lord of one of the top 10 major cities? Another Mingzun, how could he not be teased? Chapter 25:13, Fatal Blow, 3, I don't need your help. I just want you to stay far away from me. Nethersword sobbed. Woo, this woman isn't human. He had lived for so long and could be said to have seen countless women, but he had never seen a woman who made him so frightened. At this moment, no matter how beautiful Len Ruoxue was, she was no longer his cup of tea. Such a fierce woman, which man could bear to eat her? If that wasn't courting death, then what was? And he definitely wanted to live a few more years. But our battle isn't over yet. I only used one move. You said you would let me use 3 moves. When Len Ruoxue said this, her expression was one of grievance. But hearing this, Nethersword wanted to cry but had no tears. My ancestors! He was already trembling with fear in one move and almost lost his little life. If he really let you finish 3 moves, he was afraid that he would be directly turned into ashes. Would he still be alive and kicking? I lost. I admit defeat, okay. Woo. I won't fight you anymore. Nethersword said in a practical manner. What if I say no? Len Ruoxue deliberately paused for a moment before her beautiful eyes stared at Nethersword. What do I have to do for you to agree to me admitting defeat? Nethersword, who was so angry that blood was stuck in his throat, said with a tearful face. He had only just discovered today that he had provoked a demon. You'll have to compensate me for the emotional damage. Len Ruoxue wanted to rob him again. All right. Nethersword agreed through gritted teeth. I'll go to the city lord's mansion to get it when I have the chance. Oh, and you have to give me a token. Len Ruoxue requested. Nethersword nodded helplessly. With a thought, he took out a black token from his storage ring. Looking at the token floating in front of her, Len Ruoxue reached out and took it. She only took a look at the 2 words Jiuhua on it before putting it away. Witnessing all this, Nethersword's eyes were filled with reluctance. Sob. That token was the symbol of his status as the Lord of Jiuhua City. It was also the city lord's personal token, but for the sake of his life, he had no choice but to give it to this hateful woman in front of him. He hoped that this matter would not be spread out. Otherwise, his reputation would really be ruined. To Ming Jian's relief, Len Ruoxue kept her word. After achieving her goal, she turned around and left the battlefield, dragging Ruji with her. Seeing this, Nethersword finally heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he couldn't help but pray to the heavens. Don't let me have the chance to meet this woman again. At this moment, Nethersword felt another shadow appear in the sky above him. He looked up and saw an extremely handsome man appear before him, blocking his view. Let's have a fight. Seeing that Nethersword had noticed him, Dongfang Yu said with a smile. He even deliberately put on an expression that he thought he could read people. Nethersword didn't say anything. He just looked at Dongfang Yu in a daze. Although he did not know Dongfang Yu, he could feel the powerful aura from him. This man's strength was definitely not weaker than his. If it was any other time, perhaps he would still have the will to fight with her. However, after being dealt a fatal blow by Len Ruoxue, his entire Bodhi's imposing manner was shattered by that woman. The current him only wanted to find a place to lick the sorrow in his heart. How could he still have the mood to fight? However, Dongfang Yu had already set his mind on him, so he would not let him go easily. Thanks with a wave of his hand, a strand of divine power was thrown out, and the hard cocoon on Nethersword's body shattered into pieces. He was also instantly exposed. But Nethersword was still clueless and didn't notice his own condition. As soon as he was free, he immediately jumped up and kept a safe distance from the person he thought was dangerous. Nethersword City Master, this is not good. Uncle Long couldn't help but remind him. You guys are fine like this. I said I'd fight you one-on-one, but you're all coming to challenge me. Nethersword had obviously misunderstood Uncle Long's words, and he had even criticized him arrogantly. City Lord Nethersword, since it's a one-on-one fight, why can't we challenge you? Or is it that you don't like to fight one-on-one and want us to fight in a group? Besides, you'd better put on your clothes quickly. We're all men, even if you want to seduce us, we won't be fooled. It was Dongfang Yu who was kind and made things clear. Only then did Nethersword realize that he had misunderstood Uncle Long's words. However, he did not feel any guilt. Damn it! Who was the one who caused him to be like this? Nethersword was very depressed, but he quickly took out a set of clothes and put them on. However, the next second, he felt a gust of cold wind. By the time he raised his head, Dongfang Yu's godly skill was already close at hand. Fuck! This was a sneak attack. It definitely was. Furthermore, it was the fire attribute Shin power that he hated the most. After witnessing Len Ruox's abnormal flames, he felt an instinctive fear in his heart when faced with this flame that was clearly several times larger than before. However, his reaction was still pretty good. He quickly jumped to the side and dodged the attack of the fiery divine power. However, before he could catch his breath, Dongfang Yu threw out two more divine skills. It was also a fire attribute divine skill, and they flew rapidly in the direction of the Nethersword from both sides. When Nethersword saw this, he could only quickly put up a defense. With the lesson learned from the divine emperor Leng Ruoxue, he did not dare to let his guard down against a reverent god like Dongfang Yu. It was precisely because he was so nervous that he could only passively defend, completely forgetting to attack. Not only did he not show his advantage, but he was also being chased around the field by Dongfang Yu's godly skills like a stray dog. Seeing his reaction, the demon's face darkened, and so did Ming Zes, because the Nethersword had really disgraced the 9 Nether prison. Actually, the reason why Nethersword had embarrassed himself so much was largely because he had been scared out of his wits by Leng Ruox's abnormal flames. He had developed an instinctive fear of fire. Otherwise, with his strength, he would not have been chased around by Dongfang Yu. Hence, everything was Leng Ruox's fault. However, Nethersword definitely didn't think about this now. The only thing on his mind was how to get rid of Dongfang Yu, this dogskin plaster. However, while his wishes were beautiful, reality was cruel. The Nethersword couldn't get rid of Dongfang Yu's entanglement at all. Not only that, but the master of the Ning family and the others, who had been watching the fun, also joined in the pursuit of the nether-severing sword. As a result, no matter where he ran to, he would always encounter someone who would smile and say that they wanted to fight him. In the end, he finally broke down. Woo! What do you want? Nethersword, who had always been proud and arrogant, finally asked in tears. This group of people was really too detestable and hateful. Only today did he know what it meant that there was always someone better. These guys were definitely a million times more annoying than Ming Zi. At least, Ming Zi would not be like them. Compared to them, Ming Zi was too kind. Woo! Ming Zi, where are you? At this moment, he missed Ming Zi very much. Unfortunately, Ming Zi couldn't hear his inner thoughts. Even if he could, it was hard to say if he would come to save him. Chapter 25:14, Fatal Blow, 4, We just want to fight you one-on-one. Dongfang Yu said with a smile, while the others nodded in agreement. A man sweats and bleeds but doesn't shed tears. Why are you, a man, crying? Are you still a man? However, Uncle Long, who knew that he couldn't win the fight, criticized Nether Sword with a resentful expression when he saw him crying so hard. "I'm not a man. I'm not a man. Just don't treat me as a man and stop pestering me." Hearing this, Nether Sword shouted. "No. Today, you have to fight, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're a man or not, you have no choice." Dongfang Yu was infuriated by Nether Sword's useless words and spoke with a vicious expression. Hearing this, Nether Sword wished he could just faint. That way, he wouldn't have to face these fiendish fellows. Unfortunately, he couldn't faint even if he wanted to. At this time, he felt a weight on his shoulder again. A pair of large palms grabbed his arm and lifted him up like a little chick. "Damn it, let me go." The Nether Sword struggled with all his might, but he couldn't break free from the pair of giant hands that were as powerful as iron pliers. "Master, I've caught this guy." The one who spoke was a huge yellow dog. It was nearly 10 meters tall and had a simple and honest face. The way it looked at its master was also extremely gentle. Its master was Dongfang Yu. "Be good. Good job." Dongfang Yu praised. After saying that, Dongfang Yu turned to look at Nether Sword, who was struggling in the air, and kindly reminded him, "Don't waste your energy, you won't be able to break free." "Damn it, you deities are so despicable." Nether Sword couldn't take it anymore and cursed. Unfortunately, no one present cared. Instead, they automatically gathered together and started chatting. After an unknown amount of time, the temperature gradually rose. Nether Sword's body was unbearably hot from the sun's heat, and today's weather was especially hot. It didn't take long for Nether Sword to become a little dizzy. But just as he became dispirited, the huge khaki bear grabbed his arm and shook it violently, so much so that Nether Sword almost vomited his gastric acid. In the end, Nether Sword had no choice but to compromise. "Put me down. Wasn't it just a one-on-one fight? I'll agree to it," Nether Sword said weakly. Woo, today was definitely the most vexing day of his life. A demon. These demons. Dongfang Yu and the others were overjoyed to see him agree. The giant khaki bear, who had successfully completed the mission, returned to its master's beast pet dimension happily after being praised by its master. "That's a good girl. It would have been better if you had done this earlier, you wouldn't have to suffer, don't you think?" Dongfang Yu looked down at Nether Sword, who had been thrown to the ground by his pet, and sighed helplessly. Nether Sword rolled his eyes at Dongfang Yu. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "I'm only one person. Isn't it a bit inappropriate for all of you to fight me one-on-one? I don't have the physical strength to deal with so many of you. Thanks, do you have any good ideas?" Uncle Long blinked his eyes and asked curiously. "I have a companion who is also a city lord of one of the 10 major cities. His strength is above mine and he is currently in the 9 capital city. His physical strength is good, he will definitely be able to meet your requirements." Seeing that Uncle Long had tactfully asked, Nether Sword didn't hesitate or feel guilty about betraying Netherworld Pool. This made Netherworld Pool, who was observing from a distance, so angry that he wanted to bite him to death. Fuck. Damn Nether Sword, this time, their feud was really big. Ming Ze's mind turned quickly. He had already thought of thousands of ways to torture Nether Sword and made up his mind to let him try all of them if he had the chance. You bastard. She would let him know the consequences of betraying her. However, now was clearly not the time to deal with Nether Sword. Ming Ze's heart was in his throat because he was afraid that Uncle Long and the others would be tempted by Nether Sword's evil idea. Seeing Uncle Long and the others looking at each other as if they were really considering the feasibility of this matter, Ming Zi could clearly feel his heart beating faster. In just a few minutes, every second felt like a year to him. In the end, after hearing Uncle Long and the others' accurate answers, Ming Ze's worried heart finally relaxed. After thinking about it, Uncle Long and the others only said one sentence, "We prefer to challenge you." It completely cut off Nether Sword's thoughts of diverting the disaster to the east. There was no way he could make use of them. They had not expected that Ming Jian had really treated them as challengers. In fact, they had pestered Ming Jian to fight mainly because they did not like him. They also wanted to find out the difference between themselves and Ming Zun. Otherwise, they would not have wasted their time. After hearing that they preferred to challenge you, Nether Sword's face turned ashen. This time, he had completely given up and accepted this fact. Wu, demon. A group of demons. Although he thought this in his heart, he still wanted to put up a last-ditch struggle. He whispered, "I'm alone, don't forget. It's okay, we have a way for you to be in high spirits in every battle with us." Dongfang Yu said with a, "Don't worry." However, Nether Sword didn't have much hope for the credibility of his words. After accepting everyone's challenge, Nether Sword's first opponent was Dongfang Yu. In the beginning, Nether Sword just wanted to deal with it casually. However, after being provoked by Dongfang Yu, he had no choice but to defend his honor as Ming Zun and take the battle seriously. The two of them fought for hundreds of rounds, but it was still difficult to determine a winner. This fact had also ignited their fighting spirit, especially Nether Sword. After being beaten by Leng Ruoxue, he finally realized that even reverent god-level cultivators might not have Leng Ruoxue's abnormal flames. With that, the instinctive fear of fire in his heart dissipated a lot. However, he was very afraid that this was just a trick by his opponent. As a result, even though he had used all his strength, he was unable to display his true strength. In the battle, he fought with fear and trepidation. In the end, after Dongfang Yu had adapted to his opponent's rhythm, he fought more and more smoothly and won with an absolute advantage. After the victory, Dongfang Yu threw 2 pills to Nether Sword. One was for healing, and the other was for recovering nether power and stamina. "Eat it, so you can welcome your next opponent," Dongfang Yu warned. Nether Sword held the pill and looked at Dongfang Yu with a complicated expression. So this was what he meant when he said that using a powerful technique would make him full of energy in every battle? Fuck. This was definitely showing off his wealth. It definitely was. Nether Sword felt extremely bitter in his heart. The people of Netherworld Prison treated every elixir as a rare treasure, but these wastrel devils actually used it in a competition. Weren't they insulting the people of Netherworld Prison in front of him? Nether Sword was filled with hatred. However, he couldn't pocketed these pills when he was faced with so many opponents who were eyeing him covetously. Otherwise, these guys would be able to beat him into a pulp with a punch from each of them. Chapter 25:15, Chicken Ribs. 1. He steeled his heart and swallowed the 2 pills. In an instant, he felt his body heat up. A warm current flowed through his body, and wherever it went, he felt comfortable. This feeling was too comfortable. Just like that, Nether Sword quickly faced one opponent after another. And every time his opponent finished him off, he would throw him 2 pills in the same manner. Master Ning, Dongfang Lin, and a few other reverent god-level cultivators entered the arena one after another. Some of them defeated Nether Sword, while others fought him to a draw. In the end, a few godly venerable rank beasts and the mother parasol tree were also unwilling to be left out and fought with the Nether Sword. Although he had pills to help him recover after each battle, he was also tired. Nether Sword's attitude towards the pills changed from being envious to being numb. He had discovered that these people were not only demons, but also very rich demons who didn't care about pills. Thus, his thoughts of fighting with them were completely wiped away. Enough. He really had enough. Looking at himself, who was as tired as a donkey, Nether Sword felt like crying. A sparring partner really wasn't a job for humans. Let him go. Even if there were pills, he would beat them until they vomited. Just as Nether Sword persevered and finished fighting the last challenger, he heard another request. "Let's have a few rounds." Nether Sword turned around and saw the countless black masses of human heads not far away, rubbing their fists and eager to try. His eyes rolled back, and he fainted. Before he fainted, Nether Sword thought, "Fuck. Another Divine Emperor." Now, he was even more afraid of a Divine Emperor than a hierarch. Who asked Leng Ruoxue to scare him out of his wits? However, for those who also wanted to join in the fun and fight, it would be a lie to say that they were not disappointed when they saw the opponent they had been looking forward to actually faint. This is too much bullying. It was unknown who shouted first, but the crowd, who had run out of options, swarmed forward and surrounded Nether Sword in an instant, kicking and punching him in hatred. Ming Ziyi, who was watching from a distance, was shocked to see this scene and his face turned pale. The next second, he immediately grabbed the evildoer's clothes and stuttered, "My lord, these people are so fierce. Do you want to stop them? Why did you stop me?" The demon blinked his eyes and pretended to be puzzled. "Because Nether Sword is your subordinate," Ming Ziyi said matter-of-factly. "A subordinate who has committed a mistake." The demon snorted coldly and strode towards the crowded area. Seeing this, Ming Ziyi immediately followed closely with a calm face. However, his eyes that were looking around revealed the tension in his heart. These gods were ruthless enough. She was not any weaker than the fiends in their netherworld prison, and the future Nether Empress would probably be even more terrifying. Ming Ziyi couldn't help but speculate, and the way he looked at Uncle Long and the others became more and more cautious. Seeing his fear, Uncle Long gave a kind smile and patted Ming Ze's shoulder. "Don't be afraid, we don't hit our own people." Hee hee. Ming Ziyi didn't know how to answer and could only smile foolishly. "Thanks, who's on our side?" At this moment, Len Ruoxia's words interrupted. Uncle Long and the others raised their heads and saw Len Ruoxia and Ruji returning. Uncle Long pointed at Ming Ziyi and replied, "This guy." "Oh." After Len Ruoxia nodded her head, she sized up Ming Ze's entire body. Ming Ziyi was like a mistreated little wife, fidgeting restlessly. For the first time, Ming Ziyi realized that the future empress of the underworld gave people a lot of pressure. He was already a Ming Zun, but he couldn't stand her probing gaze, let alone others. In order not to make the future Netherworld Empress feel disgusted, Ming Ziyi revealed a smile that attracted thousands of people. However, in Len Ruoxia's eyes, his smile was like a silly smile. Following that, Len Ruoxia ignored him and changed the topic back to Nether Sword. "What should we do with this guy?" Seeing that Len Ruoxia had finally stopped paying attention to him, Ming Ziyi heaved a huge sigh of relief. He tried his best to pretend to be invisible. When he heard Len Ruoxia asking about Netherworld Sword, he even looked up at the sky as if the matter had nothing to do with him. "Killed?" Uncle Long blinked and then changed the topic. "That's definitely not possible. But if he was locked up, he was afraid that this guy would escape." Sigh. "It's really a chicken rib, so difficult to handle." Uncle Long's words were a little complicated, but his heavy breathing at the beginning still scared Ming Ziyi. How could these people talk like this? Ming Ziyi felt like he was going crazy. At the same time, his consciousness said that his skills seemed to be child's play in the eyes of these people. Thinking of this, he didn't dare to make a sound. He had to try his best to lower his presence. Everyone started discussing how to deal with Nether Sword. Len Ruoxia saw that their discussion was in full swing and could not help but pour cold water on them. "This guy doesn't seem to be our prisoner, right? How can it not be counted? Wasn't he defeated by us? And most importantly, we're enemies, and a defeated enemy is our prisoner, so we have every reason to punish him." Feng Chuan said matter-of-factly. If he didn't have such a gloating expression on his face, Len Ruoxia would have believed him more. What a pity. This little phoenix had really gone astray. Len Ruoxia couldn't help but sigh. "Demon, how do you want to deal with this guy?" Len Ruoxia turned around helplessly and asked her man, the master of the Nether Sword. "As you wish." The monster clearly did not care about Nether Sword's life or death. "Then let's wait for him to wake up and see how he performs before we decide how to deal with him," Len Ruoxia said after some thought. No one had any doubts. When Nether Sword slowly woke up, it was unknown how much time had passed. As soon as Nether Sword opened his eyes, he saw a sea of fire in front of him, and he was immediately shocked. Fuck! Was he being sentenced to death? Was he going to roast him with fire again? Thinking of this, he immediately jumped up reflexively. When he got up, he realized that he was lying in the middle of an open space. Not far from him, there was a fire. On the fire, there was an unknown beast's meat that was roasting. So she wasn't roasting him. At this time, the fragrance of the beast meat that filled the air also uncontrollably drifted into his nose. Without thinking, he directly tore off a leg of unknown beast meat and sent it into his mouth. "Miss, someone is stealing our roast meat." Suddenly, someone cried out, causing Nethersword to immediately stop what he was doing. He vigilantly observed his surroundings, and he almost fainted again. Fuck! Why were there so many people around? What was even more infuriating was that these people were all hidden in the night. If it wasn't for their sudden voice, his willpower relaxing, and his lack of concentration, he wouldn't have noticed them at all. Now, Nethersword didn't know what to do. It was really too embarrassing, wasn't it? Chapter 25:16, Chicken Ribs, 2. Looking at the Nethersword's bewildered expression, Len Ruoshua stood up and walked towards him with a smile. However, the Nethersword followed Len Ruoksha's movements and kept retreating. It was obvious that it was afraid of her. Seeing this, Len Ruoshua could only console him, "Don't be afraid, I won't do anything to you. Then stay away from me and don't come near me." Nethersword treated Len Ruoshua like a venomous scorpion. The fear he felt towards her only increased. In particular, Len Ruoksha's smiling face was no longer a display of charm in his heart. Instead, it was the smile of a demon. Nethersword's face was so red that it seemed to say, "Lecher, stay away from me." Len Ruoshua was helpless. She didn't seem to have done anything. How could he have scared Ming Zun of the 9 Nether prisons so badly? Wasn't he too timid? Was this guy really the brutal and bloodthirsty man Ruji had told her about? Oh. Did Ruji remember the wrong person? Otherwise, he was lying to her. At the thought of this, Len Ruoksha's beautiful eyes unconsciously glanced at Ruji. Ruji revealed a bitter smile and walked forward. "Nethersword City Master, Miss Ling didn't do anything to you. Why do you look so frightened? You've embarrassed the 9 Nether prison." When Roji said this, her face was full of disappointment. At the same time, she felt a little refreshed. It must be known that Nethersword's current appearance was definitely not common. "Ruji. You still have the face to say that, you traitor of the 9 Nether prison." Seeing Ruji, Nethersword finally found a way to vent his anger. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to pin the blame on Ruji. However, Ruji didn't take it seriously and replied with a smile, "It's not up to you whether I'm a traitor or not. Besides, you can't even save yourself now, and you still have the time to care about me? You'd better think about your situation." "My situation?" Nethersword suddenly reacted. That's right. His current situation was far worse than Ruji's. From the looks of it, he could become her prisoner at any moment. At the thought of this, Nethersword's mind whirred. Then, he bravely looked at Len Ruoshua and said, "I want to discuss a condition with you." "What?" Hearing this, Len Ruoshua was slightly taken aback. After she came to her senses, she smiled and said, "What conditions do you want to negotiate with me, Lord of Johua City?" "I'm all ears." "I want you to let me go, and I'll use the 9 capital city lord and the others to exchange with you," Nethersword said straightforwardly. "You mean, we'll capture you now?" Len Ruoshua blinked her beautiful eyes as she asked in disbelief. "You guys know what you're doing." Nethersword gritted his teeth in anger. He wasn't stupid. Although he wasn't locked up, if he really wanted to leave, this group of people would definitely not allow it. And he couldn't beat them all by himself, so what else could he do? "But, compared to the city lord of 9 capital city and the others, I prefer to keep you." Len Ruoshua laughed evilly. You're not afraid that my subordinates will kill the 9 capital city lord and his men in a fit of anger? The Nethersword was about to go crazy. How could this woman be so detestable? "I'm not afraid. With you on our side, they won't dare to act rashly," Len Ruoshua said confidently. Ruji, aren't you afraid? The 9 capital city lord is your man. Seeing that he couldn't convince Ling Ruoxue, he could only turn his attention to Ruji. Unexpectedly, Ruji also didn't take it seriously. She smiled. I'll listen to Miss Lang. You, Nether Sword was so angry he was speechless. Thanks, alright, Zhouhua City Lord, don't waste your time and energy. Just attend our celebration. Ling Ruoxue smiled. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and asked, by the way, your sister and nephew are still in my hands. Do you want to see them? With that, Ling Ruoxue did not wait for the Nether Sword's response and immediately teleported the 2 of them out. Nether Sword looked at the 2 people who were tied up like dumplings and frowned. The 2 of them seemed to be in a worse state than he had imagined. At this moment, not only were the city lord's wife and young Master Cheng's clothes in tatters, their bodies were covered in wounds, and even their minds were in a daze. They were still mumbling, "Demon, let us out, or you will regret it." However, just as they finished shouting, Ruji raised her hand and pounced on them. After a few crisp, pa-pa sounds, the 2 finally came back to their senses. As soon as they regained their senses, they saw Nether Sword looking at them with a frown. They were overjoyed. They were saved. Big brother. Uncle. The 2 of them shouted in surprise. However, Nether Sword didn't respond. He just looked at them indifferently. Uncle, please save us, and then kill all these gods. They are too evil. They dared to mess with the Grand Duke and bully the people of 9 Nether Prison. There's also a peerless beauty among them, and she's also someone I'd like to offer to Uncle. Young Master Ching continued to express his sincerity, but before he could finish, Nether Sword interrupted him. Shut up. Nether Sword Fire roared. Ah! Young Master Cheng, who had been talking excitedly, was dumbfounded when he saw this. Hee hee. Your uncles and nephews haven't seen each other for a long time, so let's catch up. I won't disturb you any further. Ling Ruoxue interjected with a smile on her face. Then, she brought Ruji with her and the 2 of them floated away. He watched Ling Ruoxue's back view leave, then glanced at the people who were still reveling in the surroundings. Other than sighing, Nether Sword did not know how else to react. Yet, the incompetent young Master Cheng had to create trouble at this moment. The moment he saw Ling Ruoxue, he immediately shouted at Nether Sword, Uncle, it's that woman. Take her down. Pa! Young Master Cheng, whose face was already swollen like a pig's head, was slapped again. Child Cheng was a little dumbfounded. He covered his swollen face and looked at his uncle in confusion. He didn't understand. Did he say something wrong? Young Master Cheng, who didn't really know how to read people's expressions, was so tragic that Uncle Long and the others, who were reveling in the distance, broke out in cold sweat for him. AI. One should not be afraid of a pig-like opponent, but of pig-like relatives and teammates. One more word of nonsense and he'll kill you immediately. Nether Sword was furious. Everything had been caused by the prodigal mother and son, but they had caused him so much trouble. At this moment, the thing he regretted the most was standing up for them. Now, he was also in trouble and could not leave. Big brother, Cheng is your nephew, how can you say you want to kill him? At this time, the city lord's wife was dissatisfied and looked at her brother with a questioning look. Hearing this, Nether Sword almost choked on his own blood. Seeing that Nether Sword didn't speak for a long time, the city lord's wife thought that her brother had repented, so she quickly said, Brother, you scared Cheng Quickly apologized to him. What did you just say? Nether Sword had finally calmed down, but when he heard that his piggy girl actually wanted him to apologize to his nephew, his heart was instantly stifled again. Chapter 25:17, Chicken Ribs, 3, I told you to apologize to Cheng He's your nephew after all, and he's doing this for you, so how could you do this to him? You've really disappointed us. The city lord's wife said with dissatisfaction. Disappointed? Hee hee. If it wasn't for the family's honor, do you think I would care about your life and death? The nether sword was really angry. The evil fire in his heart was even stronger than before. He didn't have to worry about the two punching bags in front of him. Big brother. How could you say that? I'm your sister. When the city lord's wife heard this, she was even more unwilling. So what if she is a younger sister? Nether Sword snorted coldly, his cold face showing that he didn't care. Hearing Nether Sword's words, the city lord's wife finally realized that the situation had become serious. If her brother abandoned them, would they be able to keep their lives? After all these years, she had been able to show off her power in the city lord's city all because of this brother. With this thought, the city lord's wife's tone immediately softened, and she said with an aggrieved expression, "Brother, what I said just now might not have been pleasant to hear. Please don't take it to heart. No matter what, we are still siblings. You won't leave us, right? What, are you scared?" Hearing that his younger sister had given in, Nether Sword continued to sneer. What should he say about this younger sister? Among his many younger sisters, she had always been the one who was the best at reading people's expressions, so when he was happy, he was willing to coax her and play with her. However, now was not the time for him to be happy, so naturally, he did not like her no matter how he looked at her. Especially since this younger sister of his had caused him to fall into such a state, he naturally did not have a good expression. "Brother, you will save us?" The city lord's wife asked carefully. "I won tea." The two words that Nether Sword said made the city lord's wife and her son's hearts turn cold. He couldn't even protect himself, so how could he care about them? When the city lord's wife and son heard this, they were instantly dumbfounded. At this moment, Uncle Long walked over with a smile. "All right, you guys are almost done reminiscing. We're going to lock these two up." Uncle Long's pass was to tie the mother and son to a giant tree. As for the Nether Sword, it was still free. The mother and son had been too agitated by the Nether Sword to react, and could only let Uncle Long tie them up. "I say, old Ming. She's your sister, so don't be so heartless." After tying up the mother and son, Uncle Long advised Nether Sword with a heavy heart. However, Nether Sword felt depressed after hearing his words. These guys were really detestable. She secretly watched the show and then advised him openly. What else could he do if he was not heartless? Save the mother and son. If he really did that, these people would beat him half to death with a kick each. He did not forget that he had many footprints on his body when he woke up. Uncle Long spoke earnestly for a long time, but when he saw that Nether Sword didn't have any reaction, he could only turn around and leave in a daze. Late at night, Uncle Long and the others all went back to their rooms to sleep. Seeing that all those people had left, Nether Sword was very surprised. Did they just leave him behind like this? I really don't know if they're too bold or if they're too confident in their own strength. Or was this their scheme? In the beginning, Nether Sword didn't dare to think of running away, afraid that he would fall into the enemy's trap. If that happened, he would regret it to death. However, after waiting for a long time, Nether Sword tried to move outside again. Seeing that no one was stopping him, he began to scurry around the courtyard. It turned out that he was still in the 9 capital city lord's mansion, and the place where he woke up was the back mountain of the mansion. It looked not only desolate but also very remote. After walking around a few times, he returned to the main courtyard of the mansion and began to look for his subordinates. Thanks, the good news was that his subordinates were all fine. They were all obediently staying in the courtyard. The moment they saw him, they all went up to him and greeted him with concern. After some small talk, Nether Sword found out that Len Ruoxue had only requested that they were not allowed to leave the courtyard. Other than that, she had not done anything to them. With that, he was relieved. After that, Nether Sword brought his subordinates and left the 9 capital city lord's mansion under the cover of the night. After they left, Len Ruoxue and the rest appeared at the 9 capital city's entrance. Watching them leave, Len Ruoxue turned to Ruji and said, "Let's go." Yes. They were also about to set off. Their destination was, of course, the city lord's mansion in Jiuhua City. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let Nether Sword leave so easily. Walking at the back of the group, the confused Ming Ziyi quietly pulled a little guy who seemed to be very easy to talk to and asked, "Why did your young lady let the Nether Sword go? If we don't let him go, are we going to keep them?" A certain someone replied matter-of-factly. "Ah." When Ming Ziyi heard this answer, he was very conflicted. He had thought that he would hear some reason like, "A magnanimous adult is magnanimous." Who knew it would be this? Ming Ziyi was depressed. He had been silent the entire journey, but Leng Ruoxue and the others who had followed Nether Sword had a great time. When Ming Jian returned to the mayor's residence with his subordinates, he found that the place was completely silent. The busy servants were all gone, and not even the patrolling guards could be seen. This was unbelievable. It was impossible for the well-trained Nine Noble Palace to become like this after a few days of his absence. The Nether Sword was puzzled. After that, he walked towards his own main courtyard. After entering the main courtyard, he discovered that all of his subordinates who had disappeared from the city lord's mansion had gathered here. Immediately, he shouted loudly, "What are you all doing here?" Hearing the roar, the servants and guards of the lord's mansion of Jiuhua City trembled and made way for him. They all lowered their heads, not daring to look at Nether Sword. "I'm back." A gentle female voice rang in Nether Sword's ears. He was startled. Why did this voice sound so familiar? Was he hearing things? At this moment, Nether Sword raised his head and looked at the center of the courtyard. Then, his eyes widened in disbelief at the beautiful woman sitting in the courtyard. Why is this woman here? As if he had seen a ghost, Nether Sword's heart suddenly beat faster. He was so scared that his face turned pale and he didn't know what to do. "I'm here to claim compensation for emotional damage," Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. Hearing this, Nether Sword's heart skipped a beat, and a bad feeling welled up in his heart. Then, he looked at his head butler and found that his head was lowered the whole time. However, his body was trembling like leaves in the autumn wind, revealing his nervousness. "You guys are walking so slowly. I've visited Jiuhua City several times." Leng Ruoxue grumbled unhappily. In fact, they had been surrounded by danger along the way because they had been attacked by unknown forces many times. Of course, those who attacked them naturally did not have a good end. The forces of those people had also been interrogated by them. In the following days, she planned to collect mental damage fees from each family one by one. Jiuhua City was the first one, but it would not be the last. Chapter 25:18, In the property of the city lord's mansion. 1. Seeing that Nether Sword was only glaring at her without saying a word, Leng Ruoxue felt that she was not interested and could only continue to speak to herself. "All right, now that I've collected the compensation for the mental damage in Jiuhua City, well, leave you with your token." With that, Leng Ruoxue gave a look to the people around her. They understood her meaning and protected her. The group of people swaggered out of the Jiuhua City lord's mansion. Seeing that the demon Leng Ruoxue had finally left, the chief steward of the Jiuhua City lord's mansion complained with tears and snot on his face, "City lord, those evil demons are too terrifying. Our city lord's mansion was ransacked by them." "What did you just say?" Hearing this, Nether Sword was enraged. He could not care less about his fear of Leng Ruoxue and the rest and immediately led his subordinates to chase after them. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue and the others had just left Jiuhua City. While they were discussing where to go next, they saw Nether Sword surround them with his men. "Lord of Jiuhua City, do you want to fight again?" Leng Ruoxue saw the situation and asked with a light smile. "Give me back the things in Jiuhua City, and I'll let you go." Taking a deep breath, Nether Sword gritted his teeth. What was there to be afraid of? How could it be more important than the treasures that his family had collected for many years? This was related to the development of a powerful family. If this woman really took it, how could he, the Lord of Jiuhua City, still have the face to live in this world? Therefore, the Nether Sword had chased after them with the intention of taking them down with him. Even if he died, he couldn't let these gods succeed. "Little sword, don't be like this. It's not like it's anything good, so you can just collect it. At this time, Ming Ziyi, who had been standing in an inconspicuous position, couldn't help but speak. Hearing this familiar voice, Ming Jian couldn't help but look in the direction of the voice. As expected, he saw a helpless and sympathetic Ming Ziyi. He was immediately enraged. "You're good, Ming Ziyi, you actually colluded with the people of the divine realm. You traitor." After hearing this, Ming Ziyi rolled his eyes helplessly and said, "Can you not say that to everyone? Can you change to something fresh? Ming Ziyi, you and I are irreconcilable." The nether sword was very obedient, and he really changed his words. "Haven't we always been irreconcilable?" Ming Ziyi said with a puzzled face. The expression on his face was as pure as it could be. Nether sword was at a loss for words. He could only glare at Ming Ziyi in anger without a word. "Nether sword city master, you can slowly daydream. We still have to go to other houses to collect compensation for emotional damage. I won't disturb you any longer." Seeing that Nether sword had stopped talking, Len Ruoxue was unwilling to waste time with him. She could only take the initiative to speak. However, the moment Nether sword heard that they were leaving, he was immediately on a rampage. Just as he was about to grab Len Ruoxue, an immense pressure descended from the sky and enveloped his body, sending him flying. The one who made the move was naturally a monster. Nether sword, who had been sent flying quite a distance, was completely stunned at the start. When he finally came back to his senses, he stuttered in fear and disbelief, "Who are you?" "Thanks, quickly come and greet the Lord," Ming Ziyi loudly reminded. Only then did Nether sword react. He rolled and crawled, trembling as he knelt in front of the demon and said, "Greetings, my lord." He didn't doubt Ming Ze's words at all, because the pressure just now had made his heart palpitate. Except for his lord, no one could give him that kind of magnificent and majestic feeling. The question that he had been puzzled about seemed to have been answered. He had never known why these gods could come to the Nether prison and why they were not afraid of him, the lord of Jiuhua City. Now, he finally knew. Because his lord was their biggest backer. They were brought here by his lord. Thinking of this, he broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, he didn't do anything to these gods because of his sister and nephew's matter. Otherwise, he would be facing more than his lord's anger. However, what made him even more indignant was that Ming Ziyi knew about the relationship between his lord and these gods, but he didn't tell him. Otherwise, why would he anger the lord? With this thought in mind, Nether sword couldn't help but glance at Ming Ziyi with his fiery eyes. When Ming Ziyi sensed it, he smiled back disapprovingly and then looked up at the sky as if nothing had happened. In fact, he knew what Nether sword was thinking, but he didn't care. In any case, he and that fellow had always hated each other, which was a well-known fact, so he was not afraid that Nether sword would pick a fight with him. Seeing that Nether sword had annoyed his lord, Ruji also felt that her hatred had been vented. Ha ha ha. She had wanted to see the Nether sword for a long time. "Greetings, my lord," Nether sword said again. "Nether sword, you're quite bold. You actually dare to attack Shuai." The demon squinted his dark, starry eyes as he spoke with a slightly displeased tone. This subordinate didn't know that these gods were related to Master. Hearing this, Nether sword hurriedly explained. "If you don't know, you can bully people, right?" Len Ruoxue asked with a smile. Upon hearing the words, bully, Nether sword was completely enraged. "Woo, who's the one doing this? Did he manage to bully these deities?" Not only did he not bully her, but he also made himself look like a stray dog. Now, he was clearly the villain who complained first. Oh heavens! Do you still want to live? Ming Jian felt wronged. To be honest, he had thought of bullying these gods, but after the big blow, he just wanted to cut off all ties with them and never see them again. However, they came to bully him and even robbed the mansion of the Lord of Jiuhua City. He couldn't stand it. Nether Sword truly felt that if he could pretend that nothing had happened, there was no need for him to continue being the lord of Johua City. That was why he chased after her regardless of the consequences, but now he regretted it. If he had known that these gods were related to his master, he would not have provoked them even if he had 100 guts. But was there any use in thinking about this now? Yes. It's useless to think about it now, it's up to his lord to deal with him. With this thought in mind, Nether Sword no longer tried to defend himself. Instead, he lowered his head and looked like he was waiting to be slaughtered. Seeing him like this, Len Ruoxue really had no intention of punishing him. AI. She made it seem like she was bullying him. Fortunately, that idiot Nether Sword didn't have the chance to do anything irreparable to them, so Len Ruoxue decided not to make a fuss about it with him. However, if there was a next time, she would settle both the new and old scores with him. Of course, the reason why she let go of Nether Sword so easily was to a large extent for the sake of the demon. One should know that Ming Jian was one of the 10 major cities' castellans. His strength was undoubted. Wouldn't it be a pity if such a powerful figure was killed or locked up?